Good morning, everyone. We're just going to check and make sure that we can be heard in the Zoom webinar. Okay, or Matthew, can you hear us?
I can hear you well, Sam. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Chair Crandall, we will be ready to begin when you are at 9 o'clock.
All right, we got like 1 minute. All right, it looks like we're at 9 o'clock. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our July 19th, 2022 Board of Supervisors meeting. I'll call this meeting to order. Conduct a moment of silence. Does anyone have a moment of silence they'd like to add this morning?
I do have a moment of silence. We had a passing. I do have a moment of silence. Darlene McNamara, a longtime Middletown resident. We lost her recently, so yeah.
Anyone else have one as well? Or? I'll add Alan Hamill of Upper Lake. Our thoughts go out to the Hamill family. Chris Hamill works in our Public Works Department. That was his father. Jim Steele, can you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next is item 4, consideration of extra items not appearing on the posted agenda. Are there anything, is there anything anybody would like to add from the Board of Supervisors for item 4? Not seeing anything. I'll move on to item 5, approval of the consent agenda. Consent agenda is filled with items that are non-controversial. However, if a Board of Supervisor or anyone from the public desires to remove one of these items so we can discuss further, you can do so now. So I will open it up to the board for any. I'm not seeing any with the board. Anybody in the public that desires to pull anything from the consent agenda? I don't see anybody in the chambers and or in the Zoom room, so I'll bring it back to the board for action.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve consent agenda 5.1 through 5.8.
So I have a motion.
Second.
And I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the motion carries. Looks like we are on item 6. Timed items. Let's see. Well, it's 9:02, so 9:02. So let's see what we have. Something maybe 7.2. Okay. 7.2 continued from July 12th, 2022. Consideration of a resolution adopting a display of flags policy, and I'll give the floor to CAO Parker.
Hi, yes. Good morning, Board. This is the revised staff report and resolution for Board's consideration. County Council did provide additional information. If the Board has any questions, both Carolyn, Purdy, and Anita are here to provide any answers that you may have, or questions to your answers. Answers to your questions.
Ms. Graham, did you have anything you'd like to add?
I can say that the adjustments that I recommended to the policy were in order to be in concert with the recent United States Supreme Court decision, which essentially has provided, just a moment, which is the Shurtleff versus City of Boston case, which came out the beginning of this year, 2022. And in regard to freedom of speech, First Amendment, and how governments deal with those expressions, whether they be by flags or verbiage or actions, the court said that when the government encourages diverse expression, say by creating a forum for debate, the First Amendment prevents it from discriminating against speakers based upon their viewpoint. But when the government speaks for itself, the First Amendment does not demand airtime for all views. After all, the government must be able to promote a program or espouse a policy in order to function. So what the court drew was the distinction between private speech, which would require your board, if you allow one private speech, you would have to allow all private speech because you cannot legislate on the basis of content. However, if it's a government speech, which is essentially an expression of your official sentiments, you may do so. So the policy has been tweaked a bit to allow for government speech, which is someone who wishes to place a flag, and that's in line with your views, your government view as a board, something that you want to also espouse or indicate your agreement with, then you can move forward. And it does not require that that same decision be made for everyone who comes to you.
All right. Are there any other questions from the board? Thank you, Anita. Supervisor Sabatier?
I appreciate that, and I think one of the things that I think of as you make those statements is the freedom of expression during our 3-minute public comment, where that is not restricted, well, I guess to a certain point where obscenities and things like that are made. But at the same time, this is something that gets approved by the board in recognition of something. But in light of that, I struggle with the first bullet point of flags of governments recognized by the United States. Obviously, we're only speaking of the ceremonial flag pole. We're not speaking about the United States flag or the California state flag. Those are all separate. But on the ceremonial flags, to put another governmental flag, I have my concerns about that.
And I can explain that. I simply added it because the High Court spoke with great approval of the City of San Jose's flag policy, and it's in the City of San Jose's flag policy as part of the type of ceremonial flags that your board might wish to fly. It's not necessary. You can certainly delete it if it makes you uncomfortable. As I said, the court specifically pointed to the City of San Jose, and since the High Court had spoken, it seemed like not a bad idea.
So that's my comment on that one. And then on the second one, it kind of repeats what was said before on it has to be approved in conjunction with official actions, ceremonial items. But I was really looking for some sort of restrictions where, again, if we're highlighting an agency or a business or something like that, that should not occur. If we're highlighting an individual, I don't think that should, but if it's highlighting a message of support, then I think that should be allowed, which is typically what our proclamations are. But typically our proclamations also go out to specific agencies or entities who receive the proclamations, and I'm suspecting we're going to expect those people to submit to us a flag rather than us paying for these types of ceremonial flags. That part's not in there, and I don't know how we get to the part of getting a flag, but I just think it's important to keep with the message rather than highlighting, because if we highlight one agency, then we need to highlight all agents. It's that, and I know that we don't have to, but it would be perceived as discriminatory if we highlight some and not others.
And the court was concerned again with drawing two distinctions, private speech versus government speech. So the only distinctions I made were to that end. You can attempt, if you like, to limit the profferer of a flag. In other words, it can't be a private party. That's going to have to be defined as to what constitutes a private party. But it still boils down to, is it private speech versus government speech, which is readily defined now by the High Court. So it's a relatively easy standard. As far as the cost, no one asks the attorney about costs. Mine's just the constitutional argument, so admin would have to speak to that portion. You can certainly restrict it further. I would just suggest caution, because again, as long as it refers to an expression of your official sentiments on behalf of the county. It's government speech. If you don't believe that it does so, it is not government speech. So the analysis becomes quite simple. But as I said, if you'd like to restrict it further, you can certainly do so.
Those are my comments. Thank you.
All right. I will open it up this time to public input. If there's anybody from the public that would like to speak on item 7.2. And I don't see anybody on Zoom, so I'll bring it back to the board for either further discussion or action.
Yeah, I appreciate this work, Anita, and clarifying the difference between public speech and government speech, and I'm ready to move forward. Mr. Chair, I move that we adopt the resolution, put my glasses on. I move that we offer the resolution.
There you go.
Yeah, right.
Resolution has been offered.
All right, Supervisor Simon?
Yes.
Supervisor Sabatier?
Nay.
Supervisor Scott?
Aye.
Supervisor Pyska?
Yes.
And Supervisor Crandall?
Aye.
Thank you.
All right. With that, we can go back to our timed items. Public input 9:05. At this time, anybody from the public can come up to the microphone and for 3 minutes speak on an item that's not covered on the agenda. Just note and annotate that if something that's not covered on the agenda, of course, we as the Board of Supervisors cannot address you at that moment. However, we can either direct you towards either a supervisor or department or work with you after the fact and figure out a path forward on the item that you're speaking of. So anybody in the chambers have any public input? If so, come up to the microphone. And then I think, yep, Sam's coming up.
Something's going on.
Yeah, well, something's going on here.
Good morning, Supervisors. My name's Sam Houston, and we want to take a moment to congratulate Miles Richardson on the successful completion of our digital media internship. And I want to just provide you with a couple comments from the comments that were given on his latest final video. And that was the internship, that was the final of the internship itself. One comment was, Miles did a lot of fantastic work with this project, and he's to be commended for the important and valuable contribution. Another one was, the video portrayed the sincerity of the people that work in community development department and the passion they hold for their work. Another one was, Miles found a way to capture and share with us the dedication of the community development staff. And lastly, Miles created a video that gives us a greater understanding of what our community development department does and the value that they add to our Lake County community. Many thanks, Miles, for choosing to spend your summer with us. Okay, and along with the certificate, okay, so of completion, okay, an $800 grant, which is sponsored by Houston Productions, is being awarded to you for, so I want you to be demonstrating the tenacity to exceed your digital media skill level and for your skill in striving to improve your videography, your technical and your video editing skills. And it's been a real pleasure to work with you this summer. Thank you so much, and we wish you the greatest of success in all your pursuits. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Miles.
Thank you, Miles, for all your work. All right.
I was hoping for like a sneak preview or something.
All right. Anyone else have some public input they would like to bring forward? If not, I will check the Zoom room. I'm not seeing any hands up. With that, we'll go ahead and close public input at this time and move on to our next item on the agenda, which is our 6.2, presentation of proclamation designating the week of July 17th through 23rd as Probation Officers Week in Lake County. and this will be presented by Supervisor Sabatier.
I wasn't aware that I was presenting this.
Yeah, it's right here.
I was moving on to 910.
You'll be reading it, I'm sorry.
I was on the wrong item.
Sorry about that.
I saw Matthew Rothstein walk in, so I thought we were on the next item. I got confused. I think you need to be on this side. Today's proclamation is designating the week of July 17th through 23rd, 2022 as Probation Officers Week. Whereas probation officers are an essential part of the criminal justice system, and whereas probation officers uphold the law with dignity while recognizing the right of the public to be safeguarded from criminal activity. And whereas probation officers are responsible for supervising adult and juvenile offenders in the community. And whereas probation officers work in partnership with community agencies and groups. And whereas probation officers promote prevention, intervention, and advocacy. And whereas probation officers provide services, support, and protection for victims. And whereas probation officers advocate community and restorative justice. Now therefore be it proclaimed by the Board of Supervisors that the County of Lake formally designates the week of July 17th through 23rd, 2022 as Probation Officers Week in Lake County, and publicly salutes the service of law enforcement officers in our community and in communities across the nation, passed and adopted this 19th day of July 2022, and signed by our chair, Supervisor E.J. Crandall. Before I pass this on, I just want to, there's one part in this that talks about the collaboration with community agencies, and I want to say that I don't know of a department that collaborates as well as I see probation collaborating, whether it's when we needed help with COVID-19 set up for vaccine clinics, whether it's the fair or whether it's our 4th of July parade that we just had over in the city of Clear Lake. Every time I go to a council meeting or here for a conversation about what we're working with our youth, sexual harassment or child abuse, we have probation officers that are there in support after hours, during hours. I see you all over the place. I see your staff. It is very obvious that you collaborate with as many people as possible in order to be successful in your goals and your vision of what your department should be doing in our community. I know that I appreciate it, and I'm sure that the rest of the supervisors see the same and appreciate it at the same level as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Rob Halachey, Probation Officer for Lake County. I just want to thank the board for this proclamation, and thank you, Supervisor Pate, for those beautiful words. I agree. I was talking to Ms. Parker and Ms. Grant. It's funny, we would normally fill this place with probation officers and our staff, but obviously we're in a different time. I thought we'd be back to normal by now, and thinking we were close. Then we have a new variant and a couple positives, so I asked our people to watch by Zoom. Otherwise, they'd be here, so please don't take that as a sign that it's not important to them. They would be here in full. So quick thank you to, this happens to be for California State, it's Probation, Parole, and Pretrial Week. So a shout out to all of our partners statewide who do the same or similar work. And as you're talking, we collaborate with a lot of different groups and agencies within the county. Sheriff's Department, Behavioral Health, Public Health, DSS, DA's office, Animal Care and Control. I hope I didn't miss anybody, but it wouldn't work without all of them. And so a thank you to them. But of course, this is Lake County Probation Officers Week. So the biggest thank you goes to our department. Whenever I think of things to say about them, a couple things always just come back to my mind, and that is, I'm just proud and impressed by the work that they do. Everybody has had challenges in the past couple of years with COVID, and you don't know who you're going to work with or where you're going to work or how it's going to happen, but it just never affects them. The state's thrown a few new things at us. Pretrial, we have a new pretrial agency and juvenile justice reform, but through all of that, our men and women just do the job. They're not just satisfied with doing it either. They want to do a good job, and they do, regardless of what's thrown at them. Just a quick little example, you had a positive test and happened to be in a classroom environment where maybe 10 people were affected. And as a department head, if you told me, you're going to lose 30% of your people in one day to various degrees of work, it'd be hard to think that's going to be okay, but in our department, it just was. We have a good telework program going on, and everybody else just picks up the slack. And I just use that as an example of what goes on in my office. Other than the stack of paperwork we do initially, that's kind of a pain in the butt, but, oh, excuse my language. But after that's over, I didn't have to worry. You know, they do their job. So that's the big thank you to the department, and I appreciate your guys' proclamation. Thank you.
There we go. I'll just stand up.
Oh, good. Oh, that's great. Very nice. Well, now I want to get closer. That's cool. Thank you.
Is there anyone in the public that would like to speak on this item? All right. Bring it back to the board, and it looks like we'll move on to our next item. Thank you for that. Thank you, Rob, for your work on that, in general. And yes. So our next item is our 6.3, our 910, consideration of ARPA SLFRF allocation recommendations pursuant to the Recovery and Revitalization Plan for Lake County. I know Susan's listed, however, I see Matthew here, so I'll go ahead and give the floor.
Okay. So this morning, Matthew Rothstein will present this to the board for your consideration. We're available to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much, County Administrative Officer Parker, and thank you, Board, for the opportunity to speak with you this morning. As your Board is aware, thanks to the work of our dedicated federal legislative representatives and others, Lake County was allocated $12,506,226 in state and local fiscal recovery funds as a result of the passage of the 2021 American Rescue Plan Act, also known as ARPA. These funds can be used for numerous qualifying purposes, such as overcoming negative economic impacts resulting from COVID-19 pandemic, supporting the recovery and revitalization of hard-hit communities, funding public health expenditures associated with pandemic response, and investing in water and sewer infrastructure, among others. In addition to these prescribed categories, rules surrounding this funding provide for an up to $10 million standard allowance for replacing lost public sector revenue, which facilitates streamlined reporting requirements. An ad hoc committee of Supervisors Sabatier and Paiska, CAO Parker, Lake County's Auditor Controller Kathy Saderland, and others has periodically met since the passage of the American Rescue Plan Act to consider potential recommendations for uses of this funding. Your board likewise previously provided direction in the form of your Recovery and Revitalization Plan, an ARPA spending priorities document, which was adopted December 21 of 2021. ARPA funds can be obligated through December 31, 2024, and allocation recommendations will typically be brought forth with budget presentations, the next being September's budget hearings. Today's item, therefore, does not represent plans for every dollar of the county's ARPA allocation. It's limited to 8 proposals, as described in the memo and the attachments to your board's agenda for today's meeting. Most of the proposals under consideration today are from outside agencies. As noted in the memo, the ad hoc committee recommends that your board fund the following: NCO's Building Homes, Building Lives program, Lake Links' out-of-county non-medical emergency medical Lake Links' out-of-county non-emergency medical transportation program, Medilinks, First Five's Help Me Grow software and enhanced home visiting, and also affirming a $300,000 allocation to hire a broadband action plan consultant to help the county take advantage of some upcoming funding opportunities. The committee does not recommend funding proposals from Hidden Valley Lake Community Services District, as included with your agenda, hospice, WellPath, and some additional requests from First Five. And so just for your board's awareness, Patty Bruder and Robin Barra and Derek Fiedler-Riddle of NCO are all available in Zoom, and they're prepared to speak to the Building Homes, Building Lives program if you have additional questions. And also, Jim Steele is present here in the board chambers today on behalf of Lake Links. So if you have further questions on those projects, you're very welcome to address those to those people. And your board will also have seen that there was an e-comment submitted by Hidden Valley Lake Community Services District with essentially a new funding request. And just for your awareness, I wanted to ensure that you knew that that new request has not yet been vetted by the committee. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Matthew. Any questions from the board? It looks like Supervisor Sabatier.
I'll just say that I appreciated when the memo was put together that this is a very transparent perspective of what our discussions were, not only what's being proposed, but also what was what we received, what requests we had received, and what we chose not to support. I will make one quick comment that Lake Links did request $100,000. We allowed for the $50,000, so I just wanted to be transparent on that as well. And one of the things that I'm hoping that we can add as we go through the approval process is a reporting metric so that we can learn how these funds were utilized rather than providing these funds and then not receiving a report back. I think it's important for us to recognize not only what are we supporting, but exactly what we received out of the support that we gave. And so that would be one of my recommendations that we add to every single one of these that are approved today.
All right. Supervisor Pyska?
I want to hear from our presenters so that you can learn about these programs. I'm really excited about them. They're going to have a big impact. They're not the biggest programs that are out there, but they're significant, and they're going to really affect our vulnerable populations in our county in a really great, supportive way. So I'm excited, and I want you to have that chance to hear them speak on the programs.
And I want to thank you for saying that. I appreciate the fact that you kept that in mind for the vulnerable communities. Just wanted to highlight that. Supervisor Simon.
Yeah, I appreciate the work that the committee's done here, but, you know, the one thing I want to say is that today you guys are bringing this to the board for approval, and there are a couple. I'm well aware of the Lake Links program, what it provides. I think one of the most, you know, me and Supervisor Sabatier deal with this on the LTA and the APC meetings. We talk about it, and one of the most critical things I think that organization does is get people to their, you know, I know they do a lot of different things, but getting them out of county to their cancer appointments. Mm-hmm. And if you've had that affect your family or you've gone through that, that's very important for me. It's personal, and I would like to see this board consider them giving the full allocation that they asked for, the $100,000. And I'm putting that out there right now today, because I think it's very important. I know the home building program, and because also work with the NCO quite a bit, but the one that really hits home for me, obviously, in what it does, and we get the reports on a monthly basis on what they're doing there, is getting those folks out of county to these important cancer appointments. And if they don't get there, you know, it's a life and death thing. So anyway, I want to put that out there. So I thank you for the hard work. Obviously, you guys, the $50,000, I can, I completely support, but I would like to see them be able to get the $100,000. And then the other thing that came in today, and I would at least like to throw it out there. I know there was a reduction in the request from the Hidden Valley Lake Sewer District down to $60,000. I would like the board to consider that for that organization. So it is in my district, obviously. It is one of the larger communities in the county. Ultimately, I think I'm going to put those two out there. So those are mine. I appreciate all the work. I think what has gone through has been very well done by the committee. I want to thank everybody for doing that. But those are some things I like to just throw right out at the beginning to have those discussions. And I'd love to hear the reports from the committees, because they do all this work. We get to hear a lot of it. That's one thing we're even having in discussions in a lot of other areas. A lot of community members don't know what's going on all the time in the county, so anytime we have an opportunity to report here, I think that's very important. So that's just how I want to start off. So thank you.
All right, so what I'll do is open it up for, did they present, or should I open up for public input? How does that work? How would you like to do that, Matthew?
Well, Robin Farah is on for
Okay.
NCO. We can hear that one first, and Patty Bruder.
There we go. Well, I just wanted to make sure, I don't want to open up the public input and then they're
yeah.
competing with them. I'd rather have them do their presentations and then, okay. All right, the floor is Robin's, right? Or-
Robin?
Okay.
And Patty.
Good morning, Board of Supervisors. My name is Robin Barra. I'm the Director of Community Projects for NCO. Our executive director, and then Derek Steele is our project coordinator on Homes Building Lives. If I may, I have a 3-minute video that really explains the program and what it does, the outcomes that we've achieved. So if I can start there, that might give you some good framework about what the program is, and then we're happy to answer any questions. Does that work?
Yes.
Great. Give me just a minute here to share my screen. And Derek, I'm looking at you, so if you can give me thumbs up that you can hear audio.
Can't hear anything.
Our audio is not quite working.
Yeah, we're not hearing anything.
Okay.
There we go. That was working.
It was working just as you turned it off.
All right, give me one more. Let me try this one more time. Change speakers here, and we will keep our fingers crossed.
The video's not.
Now we just can't see the video, but we can hear it now.
You cannot hear it?
We could hear it, now we can't see it.
Derek, do you happen to have it up? I wonder if it's just my monitor.
No, I don't. So the window that you were sharing before, it was different windows on your screen, not the actual browser window. So I think if you just open up the browser window, you'll get the audio and the visual.
Let's open up the browser window. Okay, let's
There we
try.
go. Yeah, we see it just fine. Here we go.
I'm sorry, are you guys getting a weird feedback?
No.
It was great.
Yeah, it was fine.
Okay, I just played this a few days ago and it was fine. It's only a few minutes left, I'll continue. I can't hear anything on my side, so I just want to make sure you're
We
not.
hear it fine. Yeah.
Okay, here we go.
Now we hear the feedback. We'll push through.
So that is our program, Building Homes, Building Lives. And in a nutshell, we identify people who are homeless or precariously housed. We bring them into our program, put them on construction sites, pay them a wage, give them both hard and soft job skills, and then work to find them permanent employment. We are also at the same time increasing our affordable housing stock. So I will pause there and open it up to any questions you may have.
Are there any questions from the board?
I don't have any questions, but I love this program. It checks the boxes on so many things that we need here in Lake County. Creating jobs, creating homes, creating community. So I'm really excited for this program.
So I'll just add, they're taking homes that people shouldn't be living in. They're substandard homes. So we've got those in our county. We've had a lot of code enforcement issues brought to us lately. So this is a problem that we have in our county, and this is a solution. So we're checking lots of those boxes. And it's really exciting. And then with our home hardening program, where we're ramping up, where we need more construction workers to get all those houses finished, it just dovetails really well. And Derek, did you want to talk a little bit about, because Derek's been the manager of the program, so if you want, can you speak for a couple of minutes about how it has been working with these cohorts?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, so the program was founded by Deanna Fernway. And then, so it's a 2-year program. We've learned a lot. We're very adaptive. And so really we try to center on the people that we're serving, the participants. And so the ones that show up, and some of them need construction skills. Like they couldn't tell the difference between a measuring tape and a hammer. But others have years of experience, but the reason why they haven't succeeded is because they don't have the communication or the career skills, professional skills, the soft skills. And so we do a lot of coaching. We're very adaptive to make sure that wherever people start, they identify their goals of where they want to be. And then we see how much ground we can cover in the 3 months or 300 hours that they're with us. We partner them with a contractor, so people that have been in the trades for years and years. And then we also create pipelines to contractors so they can build those relationships. One of the big things that we identified was that gap and identifying the risk factor that it goes into hiring. So many of the local contractors are like, they run a big risk whenever they go to hire someone new with no experience. And so are they willing to invest in people? Are they willing to take that burden on? And so a lot of them start looking to our program to help add extra steps in between the application process and then the experience of working for a crew. And then they can talk to us and get an idea of what that takes. The other exciting thing is that we're adapting in the sense that we're expanding our partnerships. We're really close and really excited to be working with Mendocino College. So that way they already have an established training program that's non-credit and for credit. And so we'd like to expand and offer even that much more as far as education goes to the participants. And so we're excited to be able to give them that opportunity to get the licenses and even more on the education and training front. And the exciting thing is that we're mission orientated because we have a mission to invest in the housing and affordable housing specifically in our county. And so like you'd mentioned, we partner with our Rapid Rehousing New Digs program, expanding the affordable housing stock for clients coming out of homelessness and into permanent situations, housing and life and jobs. But we also work with new construction. You know, we've started several ground up projects, a tiny house for emergency and sober living in the county. And so we're looking for projects that allow us to be mission oriented, so that way the participants come in and they're part of the solution. And they feel that, they catch on to the spirit of that and they want to be a part of that. And along the way, they're learning those skills, so then they can continue to be a part of that. They can build out the infrastructure in their community.
Thank you, Derek.
Supervisor Simon?
Yeah.
You know, if I could just,
Oh, yes, go ahead.
Let Patty go.
I just wanted to add one thing. As Derek talked about the partnership, how the partnerships keep evolving with this project, I just wanted to state that the origination of this project really came from Hope.
Oh, I lost her.
I believe what Patty was going to say. We started this program out of a need. We have a successful rapid rehousing program called New Digs, and at Hope Center, I think she was going to say, is experiencing the same.
Sorry, I got cut off. Many of the players participate in the STARS program, and I think it's really important that we continue to build these partnerships and the projects that have been involved.
Patty, we can't hear you. It's muffled, unfortunately.
Okay.
I believe
Sorry.
As we bring people into these programs, we have nowhere to house them. We filled up all of the affordable housing, all of the stock that existed in the county. So we put our heads together and said, what are we going to do? Where are we going to put these people who are ready for permanent housing? And there's just nowhere that is affordable that we can put them. So that was how the brain bubble of BHBL started. And again, it was 2 years ago. It was a pilot project. We ran it on a shoestring budget, and you saw the successes that we achieved. So we're excited to see some real money behind this project. We're welcome all of the county support to expand this program to really reach more people and, most importantly, create more housing.
Supervisor Simon?
No, thank you for the presentation. I hadn't seen that yet. I know we've talked through the program, or at least heard about it many different times in our conversations. But, you know, as it develops, as you guys say, we're going to keep developing this thing here in Lake County. I want to make sure, you know, obviously I know you kind of work in Mendocino and Lake, that, you know, all the funds really focus on Lake County. You know, I know you guys will, but I'm going to say that here when you come back with the report. And then, you know, we have a lot in Lake County. I think this is a great program to keep building, to really focus on our seniors that we're trying to keep in their homes, because we are all probably called at one point or another where a senior, you know, needs a deck redone or a roof or something, or even a water heater just to stay in their homes. And if we could kind of focus on that too a little bit for our aging population that we have here in Lake County, I'd really appreciate if there could be some focus with that with the contractors, because, you know, allowing our elders to age and to live the way they want, you know, is really important. And I know we have a lot of that in Lake County. At least I know in my district I get calls about that. And, you know, hey, can you help with the roof? And some of them are on these older, you know, trailers, you know, which are pretty old and pretty challenging. But if we can just get those things fixed up to keep our elders in their homes to live independently like they want to, I think would be a great focus. And we have a lot of that all around the lake. So I completely support this program, and thank you very much.
Supervisor Sabatier?
Yeah, when you read through some of our area plans, the word dilapidated housing comes up quite a few times. So there's definitely a need to fix the housing that we have, but there's also a need to create new housing. And obviously we as a board need to figure out how to make that happen. I do want to share my concern, which is I believe that landlords should be held responsible for having substandard housing. That's why we have code enforcement. And here, we're going into a landlord's home and repairing it for them through tax dollars in order for them to now be available again for a more palatable type of housing. So I'm in support of this, but I have my concerns as well, and I think that it's going to be the devil's in the details when we get a contract, because this is not just, here's $800,000. This is more of the specifics of what is the expectation. I know during our meeting that we had, I spoke of equity across the entire county rather than being focused on specific areas, and making sure that we're providing the service to as many around the lake, and not just in a focused area, because every area needs a little bit of help when it comes to housing, and making sure that we lift it up. So just wanted to share my concerns, and also share my support in moving forward, and we'll see where we go.
And I hear that too. One thing that I am concerned about in regards to your comment, Supervisor Sabatier, is I really appreciate you stating the accountability part for the owner of the home. However, there are times when they're either disabled or senior elderly that cannot do these things, and it happens quite frequently where they can't even tend to it, so people squat and destroy their homes. And so a program like this, I think, would benefit those sorts of owners. The others, I agree with you 100%. So just wanted to make that clarification. Supervisor Pyska?
Yes, and Robin can speak to this, but in the past, if she's put more than $25,000 into a property, then it's an extended term where the landlord's required to rent back to their clients or clients that meet the same thresholds. So there is that restriction we're looking at. We've talked about 5 years for that property to be rented in that way, but Robin, did you have anything to add about that?
That was the perfect synopsis of what we discussed, and I will just add, historically, we have not invested very much in materials. Generally speaking, it's a match, right? So we're providing the free labor, and the landlord, the property owner, is generally providing all the materials. Now, we have run this on a shoestring budget in the past, but and even though we have more money, that is still part of our negotiation power. Our plan is for the landlord to have some buy-in. So to Supervisor Sabatier's point, we're not here to just, it'd be a free-for-all and we're just going to come in and fix your rental. There's a process, there's an approval process. We're vetting potential landlords and really looking for ones that are willing to work with us. And I will just say, not every landlord wants to house one of our clients in their home. So it has to be part of that, it's that right partnership or relationship, and that is a big part of what Derek does. He knows the investors, he knows the landlords, he spends his time talking with them, negotiating, and making sure the people that we choose are the right ones, and we have the same outcomes and goals in mind.
What are the age groups? Is this anyone over the age of 18 or?
Yes. So historically, it was 18 to 24 due to our funding. But with your funding, we can discuss that if you want to, put an age parameter on it. But as it stands now, no, we can accept anybody.
No, I think it's great the way you have it. I know it's a really good catch-all for someone who's struggling, and this is a good way to get them on the right path. I've seen this program work in another situation, and it created an opportunity for many people, and I would say at least 75% of them are doing great still, and that was 10 years ago. So, and it was over in Mendocino County, a similar project or similar program. So, any other comments or questions? All right, thank you very much for that. And I don't know, Matthew, if you wanted to, or if there's anything else on this, or? No? All right, do we have another presenter?
We do have Jim Steele here on behalf of Lake Links.
All right. Okay. Lake Links and Firth 5, okay.
Good morning. For the record, I'm Jim Steele. I'm here with Lisa Davy Bates, and we're both on the board of directors for Lake Links. And we're here to basically support that program, and wanted to let you know that Lake Links has this Medi-Link process or program that's absolutely one of the most valuable one that we have, and that is getting people to their medical appointments out of county. We didn't realize, of course, we have a program to try to move them around in transportation within the county, but transportation has a big lake in the middle of the county, and so getting people somewhere that require some kind of transportation is very difficult. So we have programs to do that within the county. This is the one that we have to try to get someone from, and they can't afford their own transportation. They have to rely on friends, all that sort of thing, or public transportation. So these are folks that are disadvantaged. They're either the older population has been left behind by their economic situation, the economy's moved on, they haven't, or they're medically disadvantaged in some way. So here we have disabled people and seniors who have to get to appointments out of county, and they don't have any way to do it. And if they do have a way to do it, it is usually time sensitive and is not within a time frame when they want to do it. So what this program does is goes after federal funds and state funds and tries to match it up with the local need. Now, we were set up for this year, but it didn't, we don't have enough funds to get through the entire year. Next year we'll be set up better for what we have as the local need, but nobody anticipated the fact that, number one, there was so much demand to actually get to hospitals outside the county, and outside the county has changed quite a bit. Most of the medical treatment is somewhere else. It isn't as strong here as it is down in Santa Rosa. Santa Rosa is a very strong place for some of these treatments. You mentioned cancer, absolutely. That's one where people are time sensitive to the treatments, and they're very concerned about getting back. So you can't put them on public transportation, get them there, and then they have to go catch a bus and try to figure out what the time frame is. We want to get them there, and we want to get them in a secure way back here. And so that's what this program does, is try to match all those different schedules. What we didn't realize was, number one, the demand, so we're running short of funds for this year. That gets reset next February, and then we'll have a better angle on getting the new funds in that meets the demand. And number two is the costs. The costs have skyrocketed for transportation, and the transportation means that we have are through the lake transit system. And the lake transit, of course, is that system that can put a bus on the road and put a group of people over there and then pick them up at the right time and bring them back on an irregular schedule. And that's so important because it has to be the schedule that the patients have, not the schedule that they have for the general public. So with all of that said, we wound up short for this year at both the funds per trip and for the purposes of the numbers of people that are actually asking to go, because it just seems like there's a huge demand because the medical facilities have moved. The people that were here have increased in their ability to get treatment because it's been made available to them, but except for the transportation. So that's why all this came together. And once the need was there, we says, wow, we've got to fill this out. We've been working hard on it. So Lisa Davy Bates is on the board, but she is a true transportation professional. I am not, so I've asked her to come over and back me up on this. Did you want to add anything?
Yeah, good morning. Yes, Lisa Davy Bates. I was actually the founding member of Lake Link, so this is a very near and dear agency to my heart. And I just want to, on behalf of myself and the entire board, thank you all for your consideration of funding. And Moak, thank you for your 2 bits to suggest the $100,000. That would be, very much appreciated. Although $50,000 would also be grateful. We're grateful for every penny we can get. As you mentioned, the cancer treatment is a big part of our clientele. We also have a lot of patients that have dialysis. They too have to have a regular schedule and can't just, imagine being ill and having to get on fixed transit. It's an uncomfortable trip and it's fixed, so it doesn't meet their needs a lot of the time. So very grateful for any assistance you could provide. And this funding could also help to launch our volunteer driver program sooner than anticipated, which would also provide more flexibility to our customers and to give them another option, an opportunity to get to their medical appointments, many of which have been delayed due to COVID. And so anyway, I think other than that, I think that Jim has hit a lot of the...
Let's add some numbers. I just wanted to make sure you knew that the difference in costs per month is about $16,500 is what we have been spending, $16,500 moving people around or out of the county and back. And it actually came in at $18,600. So that 2,000 started eating pretty fast. And then on top of that, that's the actual cost per month. And then on top of that, all the additional requests. So we're looking at, if we got the full $100,000, we'd be able to fund 167 trips. That would get us.
And just speaking of numbers, I just was looking at our numbers this morning, and in 2021, we provided 554 trips. So as you can see, this would, help to assist the program, but, there is a big need out there, and we know there's more. That's just what we did last year.
Yeah, so this money goes on top of what we're spending, and then allows us to fill out the program and get everybody where they need to be. Personally, the 100,000 really is going to get us through the rest of the year. Even though we'll appreciate everything we get, we're going to have to go other places to find the fill-in, because we absolutely need to get these people over there and get them back. And that's where we are with the thing. So we appreciate the program, actually. We didn't know that it was going to be forthcoming, and this is amazing for us to see that there is a pot of money somewhere. So if there's any questions, we're here for you.
And I would like to also, I mentioned Moak, but I'd also like to mention Bruno Sapadier. Thank you so much for your assistance in helping to lead this process. I know that you've been instrumental as well, so I appreciate your support.
All right.
All right.
Thank you, Jim and Lisa.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Samantha, would you like to come up?
Samantha Bond, Executive Director for First 5 Lake. I just want to kind of touch on a couple of points of the two that's being considered today, the Home Help Me Grow model, which is designed to be a linkage to leverage our existing resources that we already have within the communities to help identify and get services to our vulnerable population. First 5 for a number of years has already worked with our pediatricians and our family practitioners, as well as places like Easter Seals and Redwood Coast Regional Center, to try to get and capture the kids with developmental delays. Unfortunately, we've already seen and we already know that we're going to have a lot more coming through the door due to COVID-19 and the kind of the shutdown that had to happen. And so this system itself will allow us to take one step closer to linking those resources to help the families. So not only are we doing this on the back end, but the families on their end have to do a lot of that linkage themselves. So if they're going to the pediatrician sees something, they have to then go to somebody who takes a test down to see if their child qualifies for a diagnosis, then to get the diagnosis, then to get the services. And so the goal of the Help Me Grow program is to kind of work on the back end to help connect those services so that the family doesn't have to worry as much. So that's just the Help Me Grow program. The other part that we're asking for funding for today is the home visiting program. Now, I believe it was earmarked for $75,000. That's for 4 kids for 1 year or 2 kids for 2 years, depending on how you look at it. And really what this is going to do is it's going to help revamp the programs that had to shut down during COVID, as well as help us identify some of those kids with developmental delays that might be occurring. And so our goal here is really to try to offset some of the developmental effects that we saw over the last 2 years, and what we're going to continue to see over the next 5 years as we progress and the children enter kindergarten, not socially and emotionally ready for kindergarten. That's all I have. Thank you.
Wait,
Supervisor Sabatier?
would you be able to, for the rest of the board members, provide a summary of the other proposals that are not being brought forward as for approval? Because right now nothing's in stone, and so just wanted to make sure that the rest of the board understood what you were requesting.
Yeah, the other one is a diaper bank program. This is an opportunity to offset the diaper needs within our community. We know that this is something that's needed for the health and wellness of children. Unfortunately, ERs see a lot of children, especially when we're looking at abuse and neglect cases, where the parents just weren't able to afford diapers, and so we see these long-term effects, health effects. So the idea here was to, I believe it was for $25,000 to create a diaper bank here to start a diaper bank here in Lake County that would cover the entirety of the lake. And you have to bear with me because I'm reading my predecessor's notes on some of this. The other piece was around childcare and the childcare needs, and that was the additional $400,000 around, or excuse me, $150,000 around helping childcare developments and childcare structures. I would actually like to bring back to the board at a later date the childcare needs here in the county and how it is affecting our families as they're trying to re-enter the workforce. And I can speak as a parent myself. It is a struggle and it is difficult. And so looking at how we can offset that, and this was just a piece of it. And I believe that the center that they were looking at was actually in Clear Lake itself for the Head Start program, which covers our younger children, our 3-year-olds.
Thank you.
Vice Chair Scott.
I just wanted to put my support out there for our first 5. I think we need to be looking at more upstream work. We can't be constantly catching people after they've fallen off the waterfall. And Lake County First 5, their motto and what we strive for is that one day the success of Lake County will be measured by the well-being of its younger children. So I think we need to be looking at ways that we can support First 5 in this funding. I believe in the diaper bank. We have families that will go to the store and have to ration their diapers for the month. So their child will sit in a dirty diaper because they know they only have a certain amount of diapers for that month. They can't afford it. It's expensive. I think it was about a year and a half ago, I think it was California First 5 donated diapers, and I helped distribute those. And those families were so appreciative that they knew that they had extra diapers, that it could change their baby's diaper when necessary and not just with the allotment that they have. So I would love to see us be able to help fund that piece.
Me too.
Supervisor Pyska.
We talked about this a lot, and unfortunately, it didn't fit, and maybe Stephen can speak to that, but it really just didn't fit with the requirements, and that's why we had to make that difficult decision. But I said the same thing.
Thanks for explaining that.
Yeah.
And I want to just note for the Board of Supervisors that even if, the diaper bank is not something that gets established here today, it is something that I would like to bring up to my commission and to see if there's a way that we can continue to support that. Commissioner Scott, you brought up the First 5 California and the supplybank.org, who did donate a significant number of diapers at the very beginning of the pandemic. But it was not enough to sustain us for a long term. It was just a kind of a drop in the bucket for many counties. And so the hope is that each of our counties can do it, and we're looking also at state legislature to see if there's a potential there as well. But yes, it is definitely a need here in Lake County.
Thank you. Stephen, did you want to add something?
Does he have money somewhere?
Thank you, Board.
Yes, we do.
It was more along the lines as I wanted to talk to what Supervisor Pyska said. Programs like this are wonderful. It just didn't fall within claimable parameters for the ARPA program as we see it currently. Not that we didn't want to pursue it.
Supervisor Sabatier, did you have?
Just to respond to Supervisor Scott's comment, yes, there is money elsewhere that we can potentially be looking at for programs for First 5. I know I've been in communication with Samantha about this, and so hopefully we'll see it coming back to us.
All right. So I guess, is there anyone else there's no one else with the presentation? Or okay. With that, I'll go ahead and open it up to public input. If you have a comment, please come up to the microphone and state your name for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
My name is Joan Moss. I am a senior citizen. I am low income. I had a problem with transportation. I had eye surgery. I was not able to drive because my eyes were going to be dilated. I called First Five, I believe 6 times, and I was turned away each time. My social worker told me about her, and I told about Lake Links, and I can barely remember the number, but I got turned away. There was no way I could get to the doctor and come back because my eyes were dilated. Thank heavens I had a church community. My church community helped me to get to my surgery and to get me home. And thank God I had a good friend. But I want to tell you that Lake Links did not work for me. Last time we talked about this program, I wanted to give you feedback, but I had to leave because it was at the end of the day. I want to talk about the program that provided FEMA loans. When I was, during the Valley Fire, I looked up FEMA. And FEMA is wonderful, but do you know that if you get a lot of money that you're obligated to pay it back? FEMA. I didn't, and this is another subject, true, I don't know if you're covering the program that had FEMA.
No.
But this is what I want to communicate about is Lake Links.
Okay.
I even went to my social worker and called her. I said, Lake Links is not working for me. I wanted to give you that feedback because I'm old. I had very serious eye surgery, and I needed to get to the doctor every week, and then I needed to get to the doctor every other week. I still have one more trip to the doctor, and it doesn't look like Lake Links will be able to help me again. Thank you.
Vice Chair Scott.
I just wanted to make a comment, Joan, that Lake County First Five is only for children from birth to 5, just so you're aware of that.
Excuse me, I was wanting to give feedback about what Jim Steele spoke about. Jim Steele is the board of directors of Lake Links. Last time, I wasn't able to give feedback because you said, wait till the end of the whole presentation. It was an hour and a half long, 2 hours.
Which
all
presentation
these programs,
is that?
But I wasn't allowed to give feedback about
Well,
Lake
he's
Links
sitting right
last
there if you want to give him some
I
feedback.
am giving you feedback
Okay.
about Jim Steele and the Board of Directors and Lake Links. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Supervisor Simon, did you
Yeah,
want to?
Joan, I did have one question. Is your eye doctor in county or out of county?
I had 3 doctors. The main surgeon was out of town in Santa Rosa, Calistoga. I could not drive there by myself.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I see, did anyone have a comment or they wanted to respond? Okay, Supervisor Simon, did you want to add?
I think just one of the comments, and, the reason, for myself that I talked about increasing the amount to go to the program, we had the presentation from Jim and Lisa that we can't meet all the needs. The program's trying to build. I don't know the case. I can't speak specifically on that, but we know that this program needs support. Like I said, they did 560 trips, I think, in 2021. I think those were the numbers. What we're talking about now, we'll only get 167 trips. I think we have those numbers. So it's, the demand is much more than we're able to help, and clearly understand that there could be circumstances like that. And that's why I truly support the program of increasing the dollars. So anyway.
All right. I see Jim Steele, if you'd like to come up.
I'm not sure about this individual case, but we do have a situation where we do have people going places that ordinarily we can't send a bus for one person. We try to bunch them up and take them to a hospital where they serve a lot of needs. That's our out-of-county program. And it really helps because there's only certain places where those treatments are actually done. But there's individuals who have to go other places, and we're going to adjust our program in order to accommodate that. I know Joan Moss, and I don't know what was going on there. I would like to talk about it because we need that kind of feedback. But what we're doing is an individual riders program where they pay their PAL, pay their own driver. So the driver volunteers, like she's suggested, someone helped her out, and then that person gets a reimbursement for it. We have that now, it's pay your PAL, but it's within county. We're going to try to expand it so it's outside county for those odd places where we're not serving at this point. She went to Calistoga. In the future, we're going to try to do something where we can get people to Calistoga outside the county and reimburse the driver on a mileage basis. So we're constantly improving, and by next year, this is going to be a different program than it is this year because we have been stressed quite a bit about all the demand and the changes in costs, that sort of thing. So next year better, following that, even a better year after that. So it's a new board, we're hiring new people. We have a new manager, general manager, and we have in-house staff willing to sit there and take the phone calls that are so difficult, where in the past we've had trouble staffing those positions. So everything is on the upgrade, and I'm really sorry to hear any kind of bad reports. We know they're going to be out there. And when we got feedback, we adjusted to it, and that's what we're doing last year as well as this year throughout the rest of the year. And thank you for your support.
Supervisor Pyska?
Yeah, so on the ask letter, it said that Pay Your Pal was funded through next March. And so is that, if you're increasing the service out of county, is there a funding shortfall for that currently?
Well, there's two programs. One of them is, of course, the MediLinks, which gets us out of county. The other one is where we move people around through in county. That is not available to out of county at this point. What we're doing is we're trying to find extra funding where we can break out of that mold. In other words, the funding we got said you got to do it within county. So if we get extra funds, we can add it to our Pay Your Pal under a different pot of money, and we're able to then take them outside of county. Does that answer your question?
So when we received the letter in March, it was before the gas hike started happening.
Right.
And then also, if you got the full 100, that would help with offset those increases that nobody expected in the spring, but also help fund the Pay Your Pal for out-of-county transport?
Right. To the extent that we can actually do, there's going to be people we're going to have to turn down because they have extraordinary needs, and we're just not funded for that. We're not set up for some of the extraordinary things. What we're trying to do is expand it to get the most people we can, and the most dire for certain that don't have any other way to get to their treatments. But Lake County has unusual high demand. It was more demand than we expected. And once we opened up the doors, we found out just what it was. It's kind of a hidden thing. The second part of this is kind of a hidden result, a consequence if you don't get them to their appointments on a scheduled basis. They group them up, they try to, everybody gets to a place together. Well, there's consequences we don't know about. The doctors tell us this is really having an impact on your population trying to get treatments. Now, we'd like to actually have a little more agreement with when these appointments are made so that we can bunch up people a little bit more in the buses, that sort of thing. We're going to be going after all of that. I think there are improvements that can be made, and there's transportation professionals, that really know this stuff. So as we just broke into the program, we found we're a little bit shortfall, and we found, we're going to have to change this going forward, and that's where we are.
All right.
I just wanted to, I know you want to move on, but I just wanted to quickly note, one of the restriction we have with our current funding is a grant, as Jim mentioned earlier, and we were only allowed to make specific trips to Santa Rosa, St. Helena, out of county. So we were restricted in that regard. Calistoga wasn't on that, availability. So that was one thing I wanted to mention. And then I also mentioned earlier, this funding would help to initiate our volunteer driver program. So again, Jim has mentioned that, which would allow us more flexibility and other opportunities to get people out of the county where they need to go. So I just wanted to make those 2 points. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you for that explanation, and I think that could help with the feedback that was given, so thank you. It looks like Todd Metcalf, you have your hand up. I know that, if you wanted to unmute.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Todd Metcalf, Behavioral Health Services. I just want to thank everyone for their presentations today. Behavioral Services collaborates with all of these organizations. I'm very excited about the Building Homes, Building Lives program. at North Coast Opportunities. We will do whatever we can to support that. I'm sort of speaking on behalf of the Housing Continuum of Care. Lake Links, very excited about their programs. In particular, this volunteer driver program I'm hearing about. I actually created one up in Humboldt County many, many years ago, and it works. And First Five, of course, they're always supporting our folks. So I just wanted to voice my appreciation for the work that they're doing, and any support that behavioral services can bring to these efforts. We're here for that. So thank you.
Thank you. Alyssa, it looks like you have your hand up as well.
Hi there.
There we go.
Hi. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on behalf of the Hidden Valley Lake Community Services District. My name is Alyssa Gordon. I'm the project manager there, working on the advanced metering infrastructure project. It was one of the asks that the committee considered for the American Rescue Plan Act funding allocation. I appreciate Mr. Rothstein's words and the legislative text that was offered for this agenda item. We watched this legislative act very closely and came to understand that the interim treasury rule, which provided the guidelines for where the funding would go, it came down to 4 separate categories, and the letter that we submitted to the supervisors back in March had divided up the ask from our district into those 4 separate categories as per those treasury rules. It's a big ask. I recognize that, and I did see in the comments here that the district or the committee recognizes that there are many public, private, and nonprofit entities that are facing the same unanticipated costs, and you have the arduous and sometimes painful responsibility of making choices, be that there may be 12,506,000 opportunities for allocations. I just humbly ask on behalf of the district that you reconsider any allocation. A fraction of our original ask is not unwelcome. Specifically, the AMI project that I mentioned was the hardest hit by the pandemic. Specifically, economically, the supply chain delays. We're ordering water meters. We're trying to replace all the water meters in our district to make them cellular and prevent water waste, encourage conservation during these times of drought. Those water meters require a chipset that was in high demand and low supply. We lost about 8 months of productivity time because we couldn't get those meters in as soon as we had anticipated. All the while, the water's just draining out of the water meter and is lost. So there's definitely water waste that we are aware of that we can't do anything about because of that supply chain, and that's how we categorize the economic impact in our original ask for $286,000. At this point, if we were to try and play catch up for the time that we lost there, we are looking at hiring contract work to quickly install the water meters that are stored in our warehouse.
I think we have a lot of this in your comments as well, because you submitted a comment, I think, as well, in the public comments. Yeah.
Yeah, so just kind of paraphrasing that, I'm sorry, but yes, that's basically it. We're asking for, humbly asking for $60,000 to help us get out of that delay caused by the supply chain.
Thank you for that. It seemed there was possibly a hand in the room for public comment. Was there someone else?
I wanted to just kind of
ask a question.
I know that I read your latest letter, and you're repeating some things that were on the letter in regards to the supply chain. I'm not quite sure how our funding can provide assistance with a supply chain issue other than, yes, you were hit with the delays, just like many others have been dealing with the delays. It's quite frustrating when you have very important priorities to take care of. But what does this money do to help alleviate the supply chain issue?
It's the contracting work where we're going to hire outside folks to come in and install those water meters quickly. Time is just not on our side. So the fact that we lost those 8 months due to the supply chain meant, as I said, the water just draining out of the water meters without us being able to do anything. If we can play catch up and have contractors come in and install them quickly, we'd be in a better place conservation-wise in terms of doing what we can to offset the effects of the drought that we're in.
And just for a follow-up question on that, that would be the difference between your staff installing these versus hiring a contractor to install them,
Yes, sir.
hence the efficiency of
Yes,
getting
sir.
them all installed. Okay. Just needed that clarification. Thank you.
I would be happy to provide all the metrics you like.
All right, thank you, Alyssa. I see some hands up in the Zoom room as well. It looks like we have Betsy Kahn. You can unmute. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and to all the presenters. I want to refer to a couple of items. Thank you, Mr. Steele and Lisa Davy Bates, that MediLink's service is profoundly important. I am a peer counselor. I work with a lot of disabled elderly people in this county and their caregivers, and I cannot tell you how many times that has served their needs beyond comprehension. And I want to thank Mr. Branson, Paul Branson, who is the original consultant from Marin County, who's now the president of our advisory council for the Area Agency on Aging, who also was instrumental in getting some of these programs going. We know that the Lake Area Planning Council and Lisa and her group of people have worked for years to help us find ways to help people get to their medical appointments. It's the #1 problem for most of these older folks that I work with, and myself. I just did want to mention, I looked at the letter submitted by Janine Citron from Hospice, and I know I heard Mr. Rothstein at the very beginning say that that was one of the requests that was not allowed. I'm not sure if it's because of the restriction on asking for funding for something that the Area Agency on Aging is responsible for. There's a kind of a very twisted problem there that, you know, I don't understand exactly what the issue is, but it's mentioned in Mrs. Citron's letter. Unfortunately, she doesn't, as far as I can tell, she doesn't specify how much money she thinks would be helpful. But I can tell you that one of the most important tools that we have is that printed information and assistance directory, which has been so useful during disasters, emergencies, evacuations, and the relief period when people are completely lost. Many of them have no computers, or they left their computers, or everything that they owned is gone. Having that directory has been so instrumental in helping folks get through that disaster, immediate disaster relief and recovery process. As far as I know, it's only a few $1,000, like 5,000 or something. We have a perpetual problem getting that funding, and the Area Agency on Aging, for some reason, is hamstrung to the degree that it cannot do anything to help us in spite of its responsibility for advocating for seniors. And so I would just like you to reconsider that, unless, as I said, unless there's some sort of restriction that Mr. Rothstein can explain. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Supervisor Sabatier?
I believe there was multiple asks from hospice, and that was one of the asks, was for the directory. I want to say in our conversations that we had learned that that was being taken care of with some other funding.
Yes, and Dina Eddings-Green from the Area Agency on Aging is actually in Zoom, available now if you want her to comment.
Yes. Dina, I see you on screen. If you can unmute.
Yes, hello. We have the resource directories available. We have them available for targeted distribution to community members that need them. And the ask that Janine had requested was several hundred of them for door-to-door distribution where they may not necessarily need one. And we don't have the funding to do like a door-to-door type distribution. We just have targeted distribution funding. But I do have additional CARES Act funding through the Ombudsman program that also is funded through AAA funds. And they have funding that needs to be, that can be allocated to purchase more directories so that we can get some. But for the amount that Janine wanted, we just did not have enough. We had provided her with, I think, 300 or 400 already, and then she was asking for an additional 300 or 400 more.
Thank you for that, Dina. Matthew, do you want to add?
Mind if I add in?
Yes.
And also just from previous discussion with Dina, she didn't mention this now. She did say that if the AAA board determined that it was a priority to print a greater number of the resource directories, that the request would come forth through normal channels as opposed to through the ARPA process. And I believe I'm recalling that correctly. Is that correct, Dina?
Yes, that's correct.
All right. Thank you for that. Phone 6205, if you can unmute. You have 3 minutes.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you so much. This is Bart Levinson, and as a Valley Fire survivor, this senior resource guide was a Bible for me. When I left my home, I lost my computer, I lost my cell phone, I lost my phone book. I had nothing. And I don't remember where I found this guide. What it is one of the jewels of resources that Lake County has. It has just about every agency, library, food bank, senior center, legal aid service, just about anything you can think of that a displaced person, senior person, or a person in need might want to know about. And it's the size of a thin comic book. It's very portable, easy to take around when you've lost your home, and it allows the individual to take charge themselves of looking for resources for themselves. The resource is so important that I have been trying to get copies printed so that when we have a next disaster, there will be extra copies available for all of the evacuation centers, because it is those evacuated, displaced people who will need it most and will be able to gain the most from having it ready and available for their use. So I hope that your board will look into a little bit more what the resource guide is and the service it provides. It's incredibly great, and the county should be very proud of offering it. And I really think that if the board understood what it was, you would support the reprinting of it. And it's out of date. The last version of it was done in, I believe, 2015. So there's a number of needs for that guide. It's an awesome thing. Please support it.
Thank you. I see another hand up, however, I think that's a continuous hand, so from a previous speaker. that hasn't put their hand down. So what I'll do from here is, if there's no other public comment, bring it back to the board. And Supervisor Sabatier?
Yeah, I will say that I appreciate all the requests and proposals that we received. Appreciate the fact that we have these funds to be able to disperse to move Lake County forward. I know one of my biggest issues with the entirety of this process is it's hard for me to know, I know on a personal level, but as a board level, what is our next step to support? What is our next priority to move forward? And I know I spoke about it during our budget, and I'm going to speak about it again. Without a strategic plan, when you're given $12 million out of the blue, it's hard to really know exactly what's next on your list to really move Lake County forward. I hope we can get there so that when there's a next time, we have a better opportunity to truly move us forward rather than pieces that may not be interconnected with exactly the next step in our process. So appreciate the request. They are the ones that we have. We have a limited time to spend it. We have to spend all of this before, I believe, December 2024. And so it's very important that we utilize these funds rather than give them back. There are two things that were brought up, at least by the board. One was for Lake Links. Lake Links does the non-emergency part of what we've been talking about, not as in-depth as some of the conversations I've had because it hasn't come back to the board yet, but it will soon, is the IFTs. We struggle with transporting patients from one hospital to the other. It's the exact same issue on a personal level when you're not already admitted into a hospital. It's almost something that's somewhat off the radar until Lake Links comes into play and recognizes just how much need there is in our community to be able to be moved to a level of care that's needed. So I'm definitely willing and flexible, in my opinion, on going from 50, possibly all the way up to 100. As far as the Hidden Valley stuff, I'll speak a little bit to a concern that if we know we have water waste happening, I don't think a chip is what's stopping us from stopping water waste, but that's a bit on a side note. I would hope that we can stop that. But on the other side, every special district is struggling. Special districts are spending more every single day that are drawing out of the lake as well, as lake levels continue to drop and make it more difficult to filter and treat the water to make it potable water coming out of people's faucets. To me, if we help Hidden Valley with their water system and their ask at that point, it would open up the door for every other special district. And I think special districts need to review their fee models in order to keep up with what is happening within their system and what the impacts to their system by having drought, by having infrastructure that is aging. And I would hope that in the Hidden Valley area that is something that they're thinking about if they're seeing that they're finding themselves in a hole. So I'm willing for the Lake Links, but I'm not willing for the Hidden Valley Water, HVL CSD, I think is what it is. But I think that it comes down to the numbers. And in the numbers, we got very, very close to what the 12.3 was. Not sure what our wiggle room is for expanding Lake Links. If we expand it, do we have to look at taking away from something else? That's my only concern for increasing that. That's it.
Supervisor Simon?
I'll just say, obviously, there was a large request from Hidden Valley Lake Community Service District, which I clearly understand the decision made by the committee. But I do know that water and wastewater is one of the categories under this program, and I still stand firm with that request of the $60,000 opportunity for helping that district. I know it's in my district, but even if it was in another district, I think when we talk about water and wastewater right now with the drought and other things, if there's an opportunity to help. And I don't know the answer to that. I'm not on the committee, so I don't know if you guys spent down every dime and these changes are going to make it. But the two requests I have, I clearly would like to see the board move forward with them. If they don't, that's fine, but staying strong on those ones. And the one with Hidden Valley it falls right into one of the categories, water and wastewater.
Supervisor Pyska?
Yeah, so the initial request was 1.8 million, and it wasn't really broke down, other than it could fit all of the requirements. So we had no idea what the different budget lines were being requested. Would you be okay for this to go back to the committee?
Yeah.
Okay, and we can talk about it?
Yeah, absolutely, on this request.
Okay.
Hidden Valley.
And I know we went round and round about the lake links. I know that, since we made that decision for 50,000, costs have gone up, and then the addition of the new program out of county. I don't know if we have flexibility. You do for that one? Then I'm in favor of bringing that up to 100,000 today.
I can say we would have sufficient flexibility, yes, to respond to the specific request or increase for lake links for the reasons that you described. Opening it up to water and wastewater infrastructure, as Supervisor Sabatier mentioned, I appreciate Supervisor Simon, your willingness for that to go before the committee. As you're aware, and as all the members of your board are aware, those projects can be quite expensive, and whether we would be able to accommodate, multiple projects or be able to delineate the, degree of need in one situation versus another in a way that was satisfying may be an issue. So I think more committee discussion would be helpful before opening up what is essentially a new category.
And I clearly understand those points. I know we have districts, I know we have our own districts here in the county, but maybe the committee could consider that conversation of setting a cap of, maybe it's $60,000 that may be available in certain states. I don't know. I'm not on the committee, but I would appreciate it being reconsidered by the committee and brought back, ultimately if we get it approved today, but I would be willing to be amenable to take it to the board. Because you guys do the hard work. It is the hard decisions, and we all sit on those committees, and we come here, and then another board member's like, so it's part of the process. I want to be respectful to the time, to the committee as it's put through there, because we know how those extra meetings and conversations we're having, so, but I would, I'd appreciate the Lake Links if we can move forward with that today and reconsider that Hidden Valley Lake Community Service District, which just came in. I wasn't planning on coming here and making that. The public comment came in, all right, I'm gonna ask for that to be reconsidered, so thank you.
Supervisor Sabatier?
Just to let you know that there are some things that we've already approved. This is the second time we've come back to the board. We were looking at a tertiary treatment plant feasibility. We were looking at helping out with the armory. Again, all of these things need to be spent by the end of 2024. We're going to come back at one point to review where we stand and are these projects going to get completed, because we do not want to give money back. And so at one point there may be a new opportunity for requesting proposals based on where we stand and what we know is not going to get completed, because we don't want to give that money back. And so there may be opportunities later on as well.
And just being considered by the committee, this one, just in the explanation we had from Elisa and for Hidden Valley seems to be a time-sensitive issue. So at least on this one issue that's being considered today, if it's going to go back, I would appreciate it comes back sooner than later, not 2024.
And that's not what I meant.
Yeah, this is time sensitive.
Okay.
All right, so I think it looks like we have the Hidden Valley will come back to the committee so they can review that. It looks like we have a majority that desires to up the Lake Links from 50 to 100. I think we have, I think we're all on board with that. And so from there, if there's not any other discussion, I think we're looking at action from here forward. Unless Matthew thinks otherwise. Just teasing. Thank you for your work on this, Matthew, by the way.
One of the committee members want to make the motion?
Yeah, so, Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the ARPA SLFRF allocation recommendations as herein described, and with the additional $50,000 to the Lake Links project.
Second.
So I have a motion to end.
Just a question, in the community service district for Hidden Valley, go back to the committee, do we need to add that in the motion?
Ms. Grant?
You can include it if you like.
Okay, I'll amend my motion and to direct the committee to re-examine the new Hidden Valley request.
Second.
All right, so I do have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries 5-0. Thank you very much for your presentations, for everybody that applied, everybody that came in, and especially the committee. Thank you for your hard work on this. We know what it takes in those committees and when you come here, like Supervisor Simon said. With that, we're going to take a short break. I know we're a little behind schedule, but we will take a short break. We'll be back at 10:45.
And thank you, admin staff, thank you.
this is like a cherry.
Tastes like stale water or something like that. They have different flavors, I think.
I did. I haven't had a chance to read it. I'm trying to figure out this whole.
On this thing, I think I have an answer.
All right, welcome back from our break. And we'll move on to our next item, our 6.4, consideration of ordinance to adopt Lake County Sheriff's Office Military Equipment Policy Number 708. With that, it looks like we have the sheriff online. Let's see. Sheriff Martin, if you're ready, or if you would like to. Oh, there he goes. All right. The floor is yours.
Good morning. All right, thank you. Good morning. This item is brought to the board for consideration of our military equipment policy. As your board recalls, back on June 7th, the Sheriff's Office brought an item to the board for initial consideration. We have drafted an ordinance which is required to be passed by the Board of Supervisors to allow for the possession of, use, and acquisition of certain items designated military equipment. The attached ordinance is presented to your board for consideration, and we hope to have a first reading and set a date for a second reading on the ordinance at today's meeting. The policy has been posted to the Sheriff's Department website as required for at least 30 days prior to this meeting.
All right. Is there any questions from Supervisor Sabatier?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much for bringing this to us. It's been a few months in the work, so glad to see this finally coming here to finish it up. The question I have is military equipment inventory. You went over that in in-depth detail, but then it doesn't state anything for when the inventory is taken. I just want to make sure that's part of the annual report, because I don't see the word inventory. It just says military equipment report. At that time, that's where the inventory is retaken and the numbers are provided for the annual report. Just wanted to double check. I figured that's the case, but didn't see it in writing.
You are correct.
Okay.
All right. I will open it up to Supervisor Simon.
Just last thing, I know when we talked about it last time, I know I specifically brought up, the use of water cannons here. I know probably, anyway, I still would like to see that eliminated. I know you said it was in the law or whatever, maybe that's where I'm reading it, and you did correct me on that last time. I just want to make sure anything we're adopting here, that we don't put that in there, so.
Absolutely, absolutely, Supervisor Simon. I hear your concerns. It was included in there because the law defines water cannons as military equipment. As you'll see, our ordinance and our policy does not include any provisions for the use of or possession of water cannons. In order for us to do that, it would require a change that was approved by the board under the ordinance to add those. So if it's not in there, we can't add it without approval. And as I stated earlier, I have no intention of adding that type of equipment to our inventory.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so I'll open it up for public comment. Is there anybody in the public that would like to speak on this item? All right, I'll bring it back to the board.
So I'm just going to ask a little request. I know we got a yes answer from the sheriff, but annual report is very vague in what annual report is. Just wondering if we can add a sentence in there, shall make each annual military equipment report, comma, including inventory count, comma, publicly available in the department. Just wondering if we can add that in there just so that it is in writing. Because right now it just says annual report, which I'm not quite sure what exact information we receive out of it. And this time it would definitely request that that information be provided.
I wouldn't have any objections here. I think Lieutenant Bingham's the project manager. I think he's on the call. He's had some input, but I don't have any objections to including that. The annual report includes the current inventory, the number of deployments that we've used, and of course any acquisition or acquiring of additional equipment throughout the year, which would have been, if we're going to acquire additional inventory, it requires board approval to do so anyway. So it would actually give two opportunities for the public to be notified of any additional military equipment that the department acquires. But I will, as far as, I don't see any problem with adding that to the annual report, and I will allow Lieutenant Lupingham to chime in to see if he sees any issues with that.
Thank you, Sheriff. No, there would be no issues with that. We can add that into the policy at the board's direction. That would be easy enough. But just to reiterate what you said, the government code does require that during the annual report, we report the number of usage, what we have in inventory, which is conducted prior to the annual report. All inventory is also conducted after any deployment of any military equipment. All of the equipment is inventoried again for the numbers and those that are deployed. And then part of that annual report that's required by the government code is the cost of each piece of military equipment that is designated by the government code that we have in possession. But we can certainly add that into the policy if the board likes that, wish that.
Ms. Grant?
Oh, thank you. I just wanted to make note that the ordinance makes reference to the report having to contain the information required by Government Code 7072. And that does require a summary of how the military equipment was used, purpose of its use, summary of any complaints or concerns concerning the equipment, the results of any internal audits, any information about violations of military equipment use and any actions taken in response, total annual cost of each type of military equipment, including acquisition, personnel, training, transportation, maintenance, storage, upgrade, and other ongoing costs, and from what source funds will be provided for the military equipment in the calendar year following submission, the quantity possessed for each type of military equipment, and if the law enforcement agency intends to acquire additional military equipment in the next year, and the quantity sought for each type of military equipment.
Supervisor Sabatier?
And I'm going to take back that request upon further review of 7072. It looks like it's all in there. I thought it was more about the usage and the activities, so I apologize for bringing it up for continuing the discussion.
Yep. All right.
No apology, but I think a thank you to County Council for saving us some work is in order. Thank you.
All right, so we'll open up to public input, or did I do that already? I think I did. I don't see anybody in the chambers. I see a hand up in Zoom. Jonathan Cronin, if you can unmute, you have 3 minutes.
Yeah, it'd also be nice if we could reach out to the DEA. The drug houses here in Nice and Lucerne are just completely out of control. I'm all for the sheriff having the right resources, but I think we need some additional support to address this problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. Are there any other folks that would like to comment on this item on the agenda? All right. So I'll bring it back to the board for action. Supervisor Sabatier?
I just wanted to check in. This will come back to us for a second reading next week? Or next meeting?
It will come back as soon as your board orders it. It's just a minimum of 5 days between today and the second reading.
Okay. Mr. Chair, if there's no further conversation, I move to approve the ordinance to adopt Lake County Sheriff's Office Military Equipment Policy number 708.
Yeah, I think you have to.
I'm sorry, I should have been clear. That's my fault. The first would be a motion to waive reading of the ordinance, having it read in title only, and then a motion to advance for a second read.
So I move to, so moved.
Second.
Well, yeah, first one.
Yes.
For the waiver.
Second.
For the waiver of the reading.
Yes, yes,
So
yes.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And then I'll read it.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, so it's an ordinance adding Article 29 to Chapter 2 of the Lake County Code establishing a military equipment use policy.
All right.
Okay. And I make a motion to set the second reading of the ordinance on July 26, 2022.
Second.
So I have a motion to end a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay.
Thanks.
So that
Thank you.
concludes item 6.5. Thank you for that. And next, we will move on to our next item on the agenda, which is consideration of an update from County of Lakes Energy Services Company, ESCO, Train US Incorporated, regarding recent progress on the North Lake Port Flashes Energy Disaster and Climate Change Resiliency Projects, and consideration of next steps and potential direction to staff to develop a letter of commitment to further the North Lake Port projects. With that, I'll give the floor to CAO Parker first, and then I'm sure she'll introduce the presenters. Or,
I'll wait for
yep.
everyone to get hooked
Okay.
up. I'll just direct it to Matthew. I'll let him introduce.
Well, there you go.
Good morning, Board. On this item, Matthew Rothstein is here to present and to introduce to you the members of TRAIN for this presentation.
Good morning, Board, and thank you again for the opportunity to be here. Talk about an exciting update on the North Lakeport Flashes projects. So I'm actually just going to start by introducing Michael Day of TRAIN, who will begin this morning's presentation, and he'll introduce others as we go along, and look forward to a productive discussion today.
Thank you, Matthew.
Okay, so actually, Johnny Brown is our Vice President, Regional General Manager, so
yeah,
Johnny.
I'll introduce myself first, and we'll go.
How's it work now? I think it's working now. Let's try.
All right, this is a test.
So far, so good.
All right. Good morning, Board. Thanks for having us here today. I'm Johnny Brown, the Regional General Manager for TRAIN Technologies, covering most of the western part of the United States. I'm really excited about this opportunity. This opportunity for us and for you is a big part of our sustainability goals as a company. We've made a commitment by 2030 to reduce the carbon emissions of the world, the global greenhouse gases, by 1 gigaton. We call that the Gigaton Challenge. A project like this for our company represents about 0.2% of that global goal over the next decade. And so it is a big chunk for us as far as reaching those sustainability goals. But as I learned more about this project over the last couple of months, I was just surprised and excited about how far it goes beyond just the environmental sustainability, but also the grid, the electrical resilience that comes from this project, but then also what it does for the community to protect against the threat of fire. And I've really never seen a project like this that brings all three of those elements together. It's very unique, it's very progressive. Really excited to be here today. My first trip to Lake County, by the way, and just driving through your beautiful town, going around the lake with Mike Day this morning. I was just in awe of how beautiful it was. So thank you for having us here today. And then Mike, you're going to go next.
I'm Michael Day. I'm one of the Comprehensive Solutions Account Executives for TRAIN. I'm lead on this, along with my partner, Doug Walker, who's out there. And we're also joined by GHD Engineering, who performed the red flag analysis. Jordan?
Yep. I'm Jordan King. I'm a Technical Director for Renewable Energy and Sustainable Infrastructure Projects at GHD in our Eureka office. And I'm here to support and provide a summary of the independent review that we provided for the proposed project.
And we also have on the line Craig Ferguson from Golden State Finance Authority as well, who may be running into a bit of a time conflict with us sliding a little bit later. So
I'm on right now. I've got. I'll try and stay on as long as I can. Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you, Craig.
So what do you want me to share your slides? Yeah, I've got my slides up here. Oh, okay. Well, thank you, board, for having us here today. The agenda was to go through some quick introductions, a review of the ESCO and ESPC process to date, work project since the last meeting, current project status and trends, and then to move back to staff for a discussion and decision on the path forward. So Johnny, I think you covered this in terms of you know, who Train is and how gigaton is actually a big deal for us. So you'll remember that this is a continuation of a process that started actually some time ago. So the RFQ was actually released in January 2020. We were selected in 2021 in July, and we entered into the letter of commitment almost a year ago in September. And since then, we've been really digging into this to try and get the project to the state of financial viability. So one of the things that we did was a technical red flag analysis in terms of high-level review for geotechnical by using mapped resources, environmental, and this was conducted by an independent firm, GHD, who actually does a lot of engineering work here in Lake County, both for the county and for some of the smaller political subdivisions. They bought out Winslow and Kelly, and Jordan, talk about the work.
Yep. So GHD, for those who aren't familiar, is a global engineering and environmental consulting firm with over 10,000 employees operating in 135 countries worldwide. Our team of experienced professionals provides services for hydropower projects, including wave and tidal, but we're particularly focused on pumped hydro projects. Our experience includes some of the largest pumped hydro projects in the world. Those are projects in the 1,000 to up to 1,000 to 1,500 megawatts, and obviously much smaller projects as well. We are currently supporting project development efforts in North America, Australia, New Zealand, and the Pacific region. So GHD was retained by Train to provide an independent review of the opportunity, the preliminary opportunity assessment, and technical information for the County of Lake Poe Mountain Flashes project. The review included equipment supplier information, layouts, desktop review, biological natural resources assessment, a desktop review of the site and project conditions, including subsurface soils, intended structures, civil and site development, system hydraulics and electrical generation and distribution. Pretty thorough desktop review. Based on the review, GHD's subject matter experts provided recommendations and further considerations for the project associated with environmental approvals, system engineering, infrastructure, capital, and system operations. In summary, the review found that the proposed project demonstrated concepts that are technically feasible and would involve the normal course of engineering, project approvals, and planning development as a similar project, critical infrastructure project of this size and nature. If you have any additional questions, feel free to let me know.
I don't see any.
Nope. So going to keep on going here, unless there are some specific questions for GHD or Chair, did you want to just go through this section and then open it up?
There you go.
So we also got into a lot of the regulatory analysis. As I think we talked about, regulatory is a big deal on a project like this. So things that we've determined is that this is apparently not jurisdictional deferred, which changes the permitting from roughly 15 years to about 4 to 5 months. It's apparently not subject to Clean Water Act because it's sealed tanks of water where the water just moves back and forth and it doesn't really interact with the rest of the environment. It's apparently not subject to the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers for their jurisdiction on review, which again removes something that's a really extended approval process. It is subject to CEQA, but not only is the County of Lake the lead agency, but we also hired Helix Environmental to do an analysis of the area, and they found no species of environmental concern. So that's not the end of the process, but it's a very good early look. It's eligible for expedited wholesale distribution tariff interconnection process. Again, changing it from a 5 to 7 year interconnection process, which is typical of projects these size, to something that's 26 weeks or less. And it's not CAISO jurisdictional for the purposes of electrical interconnection. Again, it's about that speed to market element. Now, I'll make a note, we do have to submit to CAISO to be able to sell the capacity. But in terms of just connecting it to sell the electricity and the ancillary services, we can do that through the WIDIC process. And we actually received a letter that should be in your board packet, I believe, from PG&E. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Which not only validated this, but actually expressed support for the project because it's important to them. The project has proven to have pretty broad support, and for any of the people who've written letters to support this and the other flashes projects in Lake County who might be on the line, thank you. Your support really did help. We're talking about 20 different organizations. Some of them are local. Hardisters, Lake County Chamber, Hidden Valley Lake Homeowners Association, Economic Development, Congressman Thompson's office. We had a large number of investors submit letters saying that they were interested in supporting us getting grant dollars. We had statewide organizations supporting it because they saw it as a replicable model that met multiple needs at once. So thank you to all the organizations that have helped us by those letters of support. They really do make a difference. We've had the investor finance options validated. So USDA Rural Development subsidized loans. From their standpoint, this is a water tank. And water tanks are what they're built to help finance with long tenor, low interest finance, which helps the pro forma reach that internal rate of return. The PG&E microgrid, or the Community Microgrid Enablement Program, CMEP, is another important element. And as we mentioned, we got a nice letter from CMEP, and we are in the solutions assessment. So we've made it through several of the gates, and we're in the technical assessment there. We applied unsuccessfully for several other grants, but we're not done there. Anything that we can get in terms of grant dollars helps lower the cost, protect us against inflation in other areas, and makes the project more economically viable. And there are several upcoming grants to look at. One of the elements that we've looked at here is a Golden State Finance Authority bond. Craig, are you still on the line?
I am.
Yes.
Okay.
Did you hear me?
We can.
Yes, we can.
Okay. Did you want me to speak on it?
Yes, please. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, it's all right. GSFA, Golden State Finance Authority, is the Joint Powers Authority. Lake County is one of the voting members. Supervisor Crandall sits on the board. He's probably quite familiar with what Golden State Finance Authority has done. We have issued debt for projects, multifamily, single family. We've helped over 84,000 families get into homes, provide down payment assistance. And we've got the largest statewide energy retrofit program in the state. And we've been working with Michael and in his prior roles and his current roles for close to 12 years now. And he's brought this to our attention, and we are very interested and willing to work with him and Lake County and however we can, make this work. And, we obviously still need to look at some of the legal aspects around tax exempt debt, but we're pretty sure that this would be considered tax exempt debt because it is definitely a public purpose. And we've issued, we've participated in the financing of over $14 billion in financing via debt issuances as well as securities markets. And just for, I know we were talking about fires a little bit ago. Back in 2016, GSFA donated $350,000 to Lake County residents for the Valley Fire to help with obtaining short-term residential while they're working through the devastation. I think that was before you were on the board, Supervisor Crandall. But, you know, we do have a relationship, and if there's any questions, I really do have to hop, but I'm happy to answer them or just get updated and update you later, Supervisor Crandall, when I next see you, the next board meeting.
So I would say that one of the key parts about this is that this could be set up as being non-recourse to the county and would not impact the county's bonding authority. Craig, could you talk through just quickly how GSFA could originate and that it's not necessarily a Lake County bond?
And of course, Lake County has the ability to issue debt, and, you know, by all means, you know, you may have in the past for different infrastructure deals. GSFA works as a joint powers authority and works on behalf of its member counties. We've got 39 member counties. And as I said, Lake County being one of them. So we issue debt on behalf of, but it's not recourse to, and it's not intended to be recourse to GSFA either. It's considered conduit debt with the revenue debt. The revenues cover the debt, and that's what we're going to work on when we get to that point of structuring this debt.
Thank you. I appreciate your time for that.
All right, thank you, everyone.
So the project revenue analysis. So we've worked on the can we build it. The next thing is that we started looking at revenue, and we hired an outside consulting firm, Eco International from San Francisco. They do what's called fair market value analysis, and they really dig deep, using a lot of tools to see what the value of this asset would be to load-serving entities in this area. So it's much like real estate, location, location, location. So they came through, they validated some of the initial assumptions we had. We were pleased to see that we were being maybe a little bit conservative when the actual data came out, and the trend was that this is very valuable and that the trend is looking upward on what the investor could sell this for. We also went through the costing of the project. We've completed a preliminary design, and we've received vendor pricing on basically all of the major systems that go into this, from tanks to the pipelines to the motors, controls, high voltage gear, all of the parts that would go in for an investor that needed to build this out. The anticipated cost right now is sitting at about $146 million, so it is definitely not a small project. So the current design is to put in 20 megawatts of solar photovoltaic at the Northwest Wastewater Treatment Plant. 2 40 million gallon plus tanks, one on top of the hill, one down below, that would be connected by 3 pipelines running side by side, 3 48-inch pipes coming down the side of Poe Mountain there down to Northwest. We'd have 3 10-megawatt hydro turbines. 2 of them supplying up to 20 megawatts of power would feed the Hartley substation, which covers about half of Lakeport. The other one would go up to the Upper Lake substation with 10 megawatts there. That handles everything up to Robinson and out towards Ukiah, actually. So it's covering 2 full substations. Enhanced firefighting capabilities, we'd be putting hydrants on the penstocks coming down. We'd be running laterals off to a couple of the property owners who are looking to give us easements on this. They asked for laterals and fire hydrants on their land in exchange for an easement, and we can work that in pretty easily. Also, the ability to feed the fire mains and the ability at Northwest Wastewater Treatment Plant, they have a number of sprinklers out there as an emergency water use location. We'd be looking to refurbish those, which would have one use for special districts, but in case of a fire, you now have a set of sprinklers out there that could also be pressurized with water, whether power is available or not. They could be pressurized and set up, you know, a couple hundred acres of sprinklers spraying out water when the Mr. Wall of Fire comes down that direction. In terms of energy resilience, this is set up to be both a community microgrid and a critical infrastructure microgrid. So community microgrid is that we can feed the 2 substations. We have enough power and energy to take over the entire load of the Upper Lake substation and of the Hartley substation together for, on the hottest day of the year, for at least 12 hours, usually more. That allows PG&E additional flexibility when they can't get power into this area because there's wind in the canyons. They'd be able to keep the lights on by taking over control of this system, and that's what we're negotiating with them. A lot of the time, the majority of the time when the power goes out in this area, it's not because of wind right over this area. It's because of wind in the canyons coming here, and they can't get the power in. If we have generation here, they can do that differently. That's particularly helpful when they're having these increasing number of fast trip events. Again, we're able to keep the lights on when it would otherwise be going dark, when people might be losing stuff in their refrigerators or having to run gas-fired generators, which present their own problems. If, however, it's going to be an extended outage, or if the wind polygon is actually over this area, we are looking to put in a hardened parallel distribution network that would cover Northwest Wastewater Treatment Plant, Animal Control, the jail, Sheriff's Dispatch, County Emergency Operations Center, National Guard Army, and reach down to Sutter Lakeside Hospital that's also very interested in participating and has written letters of support. In that mode, we're looking at probably at least a week of generation without having to run any diesels. Because we have the generation and storage, we make more than we need during the day, we can store it overnight, and we can go into that critical infrastructure mode and keep the lights on for critical infrastructure for the county.
I have a question. And what if it's, there's heavy smoke and that will impact?
Yeah, it does. And you're exactly right. It starts reducing the generation, but it doesn't eliminate it. And the other part about this is because it's primarily a firefighting resource, whenever there's a named fire, and it depends on the weather conditions. So if it's very dry and very hot, if there's a named fire within 20 miles, the water gets pumped up to the top of the tank and it sits there. We stop doing electrical operation and we put it into firefighting mode. As it gets cooler or more moist and stuff like that, that distance starts reducing. But if there's a named fire within 20 miles, water tank gets filled up and its first job is firefighting. And in that case, then you're able to, because it's all filled up, you've got 90 megawatt hours of storage up there, you're able to carry your critical infrastructure for a pretty long time, even if your daily production is relatively low due to smoke effects.
Okay.
And again, the idea is not to carry it for years, it's to make it be able to go longer between needing to fill up with diesel tanks. Because what if there's an earthquake, right? If you have an earthquake and it's tough to get diesel in, we can still maintain critical operations at the critical infrastructure. It's not much help for the whole town at that point, but for the critical infrastructure, when you're in those dark sky conditions, it's a huge amount of help. So the pro forma results, which was the real thing that we were looking at, total cost approximately $146 million. Grants right now, we're sitting at about $6 million. Others are still possible. The USDA guaranteed loan, tax equity finance, GSFA, with an estimated $250,000 a year to the county as a land use fee. The project hits that goal of financial viability that we put together last year, which is 12% or greater internal rate of return to the investor. That was the goal that we set. We have exceeded that goal, and now it's time for us to start going to investors. So current project status and trends. So revenue trend, this came from the Energy Information Agency. This came out a couple weeks ago. This is showing electrical prices across the United States. You can look at CAISO, the average price. So this is all hours, not just the peak hours like ours. And CAISO's gone from $67 to $98. It's about a 50% increase over just last year. And our analysis was done in November, December, so we know that there's upward pressure there. Another question comes up, and it's really germane, as you're seeing on a lot of things that come together for you for policy, is what about inflation? Our project is primarily composed of steel and concrete. Steel and cement, those are the input materials that go into this. This is the wholesale steel prices over the last couple of years. That peak happened last September. Since last September, the wholesale price of steel has dropped by 50%. So steel is not facing inflation. Steel, wholesale, large amounts of steel, bulk steel, has been deflating. There was actually a spike when Russia invaded Ukraine, but this is current as of, I think, the middle of last week. Cement has largely been flat over the last couple of years. But this is lithium. So lithium was around $3 per pound up until the end of 2020, early 2021. It's now over $30 a pound. The reason that this the reason that this is important to our project is that this project has to go sell its output to utilities. Utilities have to buy energy storage from someone. There's a requirement that California has to get 12,000 megawatts, and we're talking about 30 megawatts with this project. They have to get 12,000 megawatts of energy storage online in the next 7 to 8 years. Most people were thinking that was going to be lithium-ion batteries. Lithium-ion batteries are going up tremendously fast in terms of cost, because it's not just bulk energy storage for the utility grid, it's also energy storage for transportation. In essence, this is what we're competing against. Right now, we're in a window where our costs are dropping or flat, where energy costs and the price of electricity is going up, so our project can get more money for the money invested, and what we're going against is inflating and doesn't look like it's coming down anytime soon. This is the short version. I'd much rather be us than them. So, in summary, the project that we came to you about last September is economically viable at current prices, and the trends are more positive than negative. Is there still uncertainty around this? Absolutely, there's uncertainty around it. There's always uncertainty until you get the last contract signed, but right now the trends look very good. It brings substantial benefits to the immediate North Lakeport area, and it can act as a catalyst for projects in other areas of the county and beyond. And so we are going to request approval of an LOC extension that would allow us to start going to investors and bring you back an offer and direction on that moving forward. And with that, I will turn the path forward back over to staff.
Okay. Thank you very much, Michael. And just for clarity, there isn't a letter of commitment on your board's agenda today. So you're going to be providing direction to staff as to which pathway you'd like us to move forward toward. And those pathways may include development of a new letter of commitment, and which would extend the time period of the previous letter of commitment. So from here, there are 3 pathways essentially forward. And you'll recall on September 21st, 2021, when your board approved the letter of commitment for Train initially to continue exploring the feasibility of the North Lakeport projects, there were 3 potential outcomes at that time. One of those was the project failing to meet its goals, which is failing to be feasible for any reason. Second, the project meeting its goals and the county opting to continue moving forward, which would require entry into a development agreement and a new letter of commitment with a higher termination fee. And third, the project meeting its goals and the county nonetheless deciding not to move forward. And under that pathway, the county would be required to pay the termination fee of $100,000. Under the terms of the current letter of commitment as approved September 21 and amended March 8, 2022, once the project hits the trigger of the 12% internal rate of return as Michael described, there are 3 potential paths forward from there. 1, we can act to terminate the letter of commitment and immediately stop work on the North Lakeport projects. The termination fee, again, with that selection would be $100,000, as described in the letter of commitment as amended in March. And path 2, we can direct Train to prepare a tender for offers process. And that would entail Train first engaging in about 12 months or so of additional development work. And that could include additional environmental studies, working through some regulatory challenges or processes. And as you're aware, the termination fees are a function of the costs that Train is assuming. We cover a percentage of those costs. And so this option would carry, because it would require the most upfront work before engagement of an investor, it would require the most upfront investment on the part of Train. And so while the final amount of that termination fee cannot be fully known at this time, it could be about $1.5 million or more under Pathway 2. If your board directs staff to pursue option 2, then once the additional development work is complete, Train will assist the county in publicizing and conducting the tender for offers process, essentially soliciting bids from potential investors. And there are many elements, including the cost of materials and even the regulatory environment, that could change over that period of about 12 months that would be needed to prepare for the tender for offers process. So that pathway has some potential to introduce a significant amount of complexity, as well as carrying the markedly higher termination fee should your board choose not to move forward. And option number 3, pathway number 3, your board could choose to direct Train to find a qualified investor and engage in bilateral negotiations. Under this pathway, Train will consult with the county to better understand what would constitute the ideal financial partner for the North Lakeport projects. And what we anticipate that would look like is a workshop with your board where we would talk through some of the things that could be prioritized in seeking those financial partners for the project, and seek your board's direction and public input on what should be prioritized. So, and some examples of that could be, are we looking for a company specifically with previous experience developing energy projects? Or is it more important just, across the board that the investor is highly financially stable and maybe has the wherewithal to, see the process through to the very extent? And of course, all of those things can be important and really appropriate. The revised termination fee for pathway number 3 is expected to be somewhere in the neighborhood of $250,000 to $300,000, so significantly lower than pathway 2. So today we're seeking your board's direction on next steps. And as I stated at the beginning of this presentation, there's no letter of commitment that is attached to today's board agenda. But as you will appreciate, directing staff to prepare a letter of commitment in consistency with option 3 would facilitate the North Lakeport projects continuing to progress with a significantly lower termination fee than option 2. But the termination fee obviously is not your board's only consideration. And that's why we have the group of people that we have here today, so you can get your questions answered. We look forward to your discussion and direction, and thank you for engaging this presentation.
Thank you, Matthew. Thank you, Michael. Any comments from the board? Supervisor Sabatier?
So I think before there's any decision, I'd like to find out, how do we make sure that this doesn't fall into FERC? How do we make sure that it doesn't fall under Clean Water Act? I believe in previous presentations there was a higher level of certainty, and now I'm seeing the word apparently not going to fall under FERC. And in my opinion, before adding more potential termination costs, that I'd like to know 100% that this doesn't fall into those categories where it just extends the project timeline by another, who knows, 5 to 10 years, depending on what their requirements are.
Sure. If this has to go through a FERC process, the project crashes, and it's on us, not on you. This is a short answer to this. If we're subject to Clean Water Act and that takes 5 to 7 years of development, we're going to back out. We sadly just had to exercise that option with County of Tuolumne. With County of Tuolumne, as we were going through, we found out that we were not able to use the fast track process at FERC, and the project looked good in a lot of ways, but because it extended out, we had to terminate our project with Tuolumne County, and we didn't charge them a dime. So those risks, they're not final, Supervisor Sabatier, until we get the FERC order that says, yes, you are non-jurisdictional to us, It's not final until we get the interconnection done and those other things. But our certainty level has actually increased pretty substantially in the 10 months since we were here, or since we were here in September to get started on this. We have talked with, for example, practitioners that do nothing but FERC regulatory work. We've pulled up other examples that have gone to FERC and filed what's called a notice of intent and said, we're going to do this, but we don't think we are jurisdictional to you, and reviewed FERC orders that have come back and agreed with that. Our plan as Train is, if we do move into the next phase, FERC is one of the things we're going to do a week later, is we're going to pull the trigger, write the check for the attorneys, and start the process on the FERC jurisdictionality. And a few other things, such as we've been negotiating with the property owners to buy options for the easements. We'll be funding those and moving forward with those types of things. But if any of those items, whether it's the interconnection process, or FERC, or Clean Water Act, or Army Corps, actually fails to happen the way that we anticipated at this point, and it moves it to a longer development process, that's on Train, which is similar to the slide we were looking at. If the project fails, the risk is on us. The only risk that's on the county is if the county fails to exercise a discretionary type of option, and just basically chooses not to do the project, as opposed to something crashing the project out, whether it's, price of steel or the ability to sell or something along those lines.
And so that's my second, I appreciate the response. That's my second comment as well, is about risk. Not sure if you can go back slides to the support and interest of the many entities. That right there. So right now, my concern is the level of risk that the county is taking when there's benefits to so many, not just the county. I'd love to see if there's a way to decrease our risk and get others involved in this process with us to be able to coordinate and split the risk to a certain point. Because right now if we move forward, it's all on the county, and if there's something that provokes us to have to pull out, for whatever reason it might be, that's entirely on us. And I think this is such a large project that I would like to see, not necessarily just kind of like a JPA type of thing, like a group of beneficiaries coming together and being able to split that risk.
So we work at the pleasure of the board, and we'd be happy to arrange things however you like, but I'll bring up a couple of thoughts that should go into this. One is, if you're splitting up the risk, then you're probably asking for people to participate in the rewards. So that may be the revenue stream that's coming out of that. If you're splitting up the risk, they're also going to want some say in the decision. So if the decision is a discretionary one of the county, and XYZ CSD is now part of this JPA, if they're on the hook for part of the cost, but they don't get a vote in the decision-making process, and the decision-making process on those discretionary items is exclusively to the board, I'm not exactly sure how to arrange that. I'm sure that people who are smarter than I could do so. And the other part about it is time. Time kills all deals. Right now, we're looking pretty good. Right now, when we talk to people like Sonoma Clean Power, it's yes, please move now. I don't know how much time it would take to set up a JPA like that. It probably wouldn't be super fast. It probably wouldn't be 10 years, but it could actually significantly impact the process. If we go down path 3, where we define the characteristics that we're looking for in an ideal, an optimal partner, we're looking at getting you an investor offer by the end of the year. That's our goal. And I see that very difficult to put together if we're forming a new JPA or something like that, given those other attributes.
And I appreciate the comments, and right now we're looking at a potential $250,000, and that's the reward that you're speaking of splitting. But in my opinion, the reward is fire suppression, electrification when things are being shut down, and that's a benefit to a much larger audience than just the reward. I only gave an example of JPA because we all know that that's one way for people to come together, but that we can simplify that potentially. But I have, and I don't know, I would love to hear from Supervisor Simon, but I have a comment from him from our last time together that's echoing, which is, we have yet to see one of these things come to fruition, and so therefore that risk, without seeing some other project that says, yes, look, we've done exactly what you're looking to do, I'd love to limit that risk as much as possible, which may diminish our reward, but again, the reward for the community as a whole does not change whatsoever. So those are my comments.
Supervisor Pyska?
So you mentioned the timeline for option 3, you'd be by the end of the year, so in 6 months?
That would be our hope, is that if so let's just say that, for example, on August 9th, we conducted a workshop to discuss the different characteristics that would make an ideal counterparty for the county. And we then executed an LOC that authorized us to start moving forward. At that point, a couple of things happen. One is, in the next week, we would be executing the options to purchase the easements and funding those, setting those up for funding. We'd be authorizing the FERC attorneys to do the filings there in DC, and we would start at that point evaluating investors along the lines that you've laid out for us in the workshop. That's in August. If we're with the degree of interest that we have, and as far as the project is along, our goal would be to see an offer come back to the county, hopefully by the end of the year. So that's pretty fast. It could happen as early as October, November timeframe. Now that's the offer coming in. That's not necessarily signing the contract. There are going to be several months of negotiations. But the goal would be, hopefully sometime in Q1, the county and its counterparty, the investor, arrive at a final contract between the two of them, between the two of you, and then moving forward to final design, getting firm fixed pricing, filing for interconnection, and the rest of the things, and having notice to proceed on construction. Best guess is by the end of next year, and then a 12 to 18 month construction process after that.
Okay, and then what would your timeline for option 2 be?
Best guess is probably about a year before we'd be able to float the RFP. So one of the things that we need to do is much more, because we'd be going to a lot of different types of potential investors, we'd need to find out from them what more on the development track would need to get done. So for example, would we need to have FERC in hand? Would we need to have CEQA in hand instead of commenced? Would we need to have interconnection in hand instead of commenced? When you're negotiating on a bilateral basis, particularly with experienced developers, they can take a look at it and say, oh, you're already to this point, you've got these plans, you've had your initial study completed, here are the results of the field survey, I'm comfortable with the risk level on this going forward. That's not the case if you're going to a tender for offers, because you have a much broader range of potential investors. So we're probably looking at 12 months of work and a lot more development before we get it ready. That's the first part. The second part is tender for offers is a federally regulated process that follows a lot of specific rules. So we'd have to be bringing in outside counsel to help structure that and work with the county to administer it, because technically it would be the tender for offers to Lake County, issued by Lake County, with us as a technical advisor to you in administering that process. So it's a different process. The the thing that I think that really distinguishes between the two is that from our standpoint and in working with staff, it appears that the primary considerations that you're going to make in choosing a partner are not quantitative. It's not somebody's paying $220,000 a year and somebody else is paying $250,000 and somebody's offering $270,000. It's a relatively narrow band about where that comes in. They're mostly qualitative. What's the balance sheet of your organization? Are you small or are you big? Do you have experience developing renewables? Do you have experience with pump storage hydro? Do you have a good environmental record? We put together for staff a large number of different attributes that you could look through. That's a pure policy decision, but they're qualitative, not quantitative. And that's where having the ability to say, this is sort of define what you would call your ideal counterparty, and then directing us to go find it, really sets up better for a bilateral selection process than it does for an RFP process that we would be going through with a tender for offer.
Okay, so option 3 is a shorter timeline and
Yes.
less risk and more customization time for the partner that
Correct.
we intend to find. Okay, thanks.
And sole discretion at the board level, right?
Correct.
Any other?
I think Anita went.
I'm sorry, yeah. Anita, I did see you put your hand on the mic, sorry.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just had a question. I understand the response with regard to apparently FERC is not going to be an issue. Your board may want to inquire a little further as to the Clean Water Act and the role of this entity and the county in terms of any violations, or at what point will these decisions be made to preclude any violations of the Clean Water Act, which has some onerous penalties.
Thank you. That's a very good question. What we would be doing is applying to the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. I think this is it, so I've got to put a little asterisk along here on the exact application process. But we would be utilizing groundwater in closed tanks with roofs on them that do not use the surface waters of the United States, that do not have avian fouling, that do not discharge, and that are not in communication with the surface waters of the United States. And so I'm not exactly sure what that process is, but there is a recognized process by which we can state the characteristics of the process as envisioned, set up the parameters within which we would operate, and then get that exemption. And that would also be something that would be in the final agreement between the investor operating the facility and the county as to staying within those and the transfer of that liability to the investor in case they violated the rules and the stipulations that been laid out.
And are there any questions?
Obligations are and where the liability on that lies.
All right, we'll go ahead if there's not anything else, Matthew.
I did want to just interject one question, if it's okay with you.
Yes.
And that's just, I think, I hear Supervisor Sabatier asking questions about the risk to the county and things, and kind of trying to appreciate a little bit better what could go wrong. And I also heard Supervisor Simon saying, I heard Supervisor Simon the last time around and Supervisor Sabatier echoing those comments this time, that this isn't a project that there's a specific example of somewhere out there.
But we do have a lot of subject matter experts that we could provide additional information to you. I also have the projects that we are working on, a capability statement, and there are projects all over the globe. So, pumped hydro storage is, as I'm sure you're aware, is what the majority of storage is, energy storage is global in the world.
It's just, plainly what can go wrong, so we can hopefully speak to some of Supervisor Sabatier's concerns expressed earlier.
Sure. So prices could go up for materials. the value of electricity could go down, what we could sell it for, which would make the project fall out of economic viability. It's not unheard of for electric costs to reduce during a recession. Most of the trends right now look like they're going up, and sadly they look like electric rates are going up pretty steeply overall in California, but from the standpoint of this project, that's a good thing, not a bad thing. But they could reverse. We could run into something during the NEPA process that's unexpected. We don't think so. We think that we've investigated that fairly well. But you know, until you get that final adjudication and the letter in hand, you could. Interest rates are a big threat. So I'd say if we have when we go out for finance, call it 2020, early 2024, and we're ready to start doing this, could rising interest rates kill a project like this? They absolutely could, because for the investor, they're looking at a combination of the equity that they put in and the debt service needs to provide a cash flow back on the equity that they put in. I'd say that the interest rates are probably the biggest single one, but by the same token, if interest rates are going up, then the cost of most of the assets that an electrical utility would need to buy go up too. So there's sort of a countervailing force. So I'd say those are the big ones, are interest rates and construction costs going up.
And Michael, I think I'll ask a little bit more targeted question if it's okay with your board. And that's because you mentioned the interest rates going up, the cost of the materials going up, and some of those things are beyond the county's control.
Absolutely.
But what are the risks to the county specifically where our board or the board in place at the time may choose to stop the project, so to speak, and therefore trigger the termination fee?
Sure. So this comes back to where we are in the current LOC. Is if the project fails because interest rates go up, or it turns out that regulatory changes make this not possible, any of those things that kill the project are not discretionary to the county. And at that point, Train continues to carry the risk in this going forward. The point where it would be if the county said, we dislike the aesthetics of the way that this is installed and the mitigation measures that we were able to offer, or that would be required to get it to something that was acceptable to the county, made it economically infeasible. That's discretionary to the county. We're trying to mitigate the aesthetic impacts of this, but at the end of the day, it's going to be 3 48-inch pipes coming down the side of the mountain. It's kind of hard to hide those. And if you try to bury them, your costs go up so much that you're not really going to be able to complete the project. So if a future board said the impacts, the visual impacts of the pipelines coming down the side of the mountain outweigh these benefits, that's a good example of what I think would be a discretionary decision by the board that would then, and you decline to move forward at that point, then that would be a discretionary that would trigger it.
Ms. Grant?
You may want to inquire if that's certainly separate and apart from the board's function or the county's function as lead agency, where it would consider mitigations and it would consider aesthetics and would have to as part of its statutory requirements as a lead agency. I would assume or hope that that would be separate and apart from the type of aesthetic preference that is being spoken of here. Because you have to perform your function as lead agency according to the statutory requirements. It's a discretionary function, but within very established parameters, as your board knows.
Supervisor Sabatier?
So, quick question on that process. We go through the CEQA analysis. Is this like a use permit that we would be obtaining from the county that goes in front of the Planning Commission that approves the initial study of the CEQA, and obviously the NEPA would probably be included as well? Is that the process that we anticipate to take?
I am not so you got to one place where I am not the CEQA expert on this. The part, and we have been in contact with county's community development. The process, as I understand it, is that we would be completing and submitting the initial study based on the field work that's been done to date. And actually, that initial study, we've been working with GHD. They would be completing the initial study and submitting that. And then subsequent to submitting the initial study, based on the findings that were found in there, we would be working with community development to try and determine the best path to move forward from there. And it could go towards a mitigated negative declaration. It could be going towards a full environmental impact report. Again, depending on what the findings are that are in the initial study. At that point, as it moved forward, it would most likely not be completed by county staff. It would be outsourced to a third party that would not be GHD, because GHD completed the initial study on it. That subsequent work would be paid for by the investor. So this is work that gets done post investor selection, and they would be funding the work of that outside consulting engineering firm that's working for the county, again based off the initial study prepared initially, and that at the conclusion of that you would get to a determination if it was going mitigated neg deck or whether it was going full DIR. And I apologize for my relatively shallow knowledge of the process in there. I'm sure there are people who know it a lot better than I.
And just to follow up, my reason for bringing that up is if it goes through the standard process that, in my mind, I'm thinking maybe the process it follows, that there is the chance for appeals from whether it's the community, whether it's other groups, agencies, and then the potential to eventually land in court. We've experienced that ourselves. Is that, if it gets terminated in that way, would that still fall on the risk of you and the investors, or would that fall on the risk that the county?
And this is where I'm going to play the I'm not a lawyer card. But in general, what's looked for on something like this, and Johnny, I may turn to you on this as well, is that things that are outside of the county's control, we don't look for the county to take the risk. In the areas that the county has discretion on, that the board has discretion on, within the, as Ms. Grant cited, within statutory constraints, that is where we look for the risk to be transferred to the county. Johnny?
Yeah, I think that's a really good scenario to play through. That could, very likely, or not very likely, but probably one of the most likely discretionary or scenarios that could come up. I'd say in that one, if we're going down option 3, that's one that I think we could take the risk on. We just got to be clear that we're taking that risk, because option 3 is, like I said, it's from financial standpoint, it's the lowest risk. If we're talking option 2, there's a lot there, and it gets a little more, a little more pressure on an option 2 type of scenario. On option 3, I think that's one where, between us and investors taking that risk, we could do that.
And I said it earlier today, the devil will be in the details, and I would hope that if we do move forward to the next step, which obviously seems to be option 3 rather than option 2, that would be in writing to ensure that we have those things detailed out.
Thank you. Ms. Grant?
The only thing I would add is that obviously, as your board well knows, when the county sits as lead agency, your discretionary determinations are done pursuant to environmental law and your requirements as lead agency under state law, and they can't be compromised by any particular project. So there's going to have to be something written to avoid any potential conflicts for your board from performing those functions that you're required to perform statutorily, if it should arise. And certainly the county itself as lead agency is going to have to perform those functions through community development.
In thinking of the discussion we're at of potential discretionary interruptions or something of that nature, I know in dealing with a couple of projects recently, a situation where CEQA was struck for a tribal monitoring situation where we were far along a project and had to stop and start kind of in another area to attend to those issues. And also in a long-term project that we were in, that's already been well over 30 years in working on it, we ran into some issues on that too. So we just want to make sure, just highlighting that as well, the AB 52 laws and things of that nature, how that looks if that happens as well. So I just...
Yeah, to me, that one's a very clear one. That's our risk, right? It's our job to flush all that out and kind of do our due diligence in those areas before we spend too much money. That's why we're going to be knocking those things out off early off of our list before we get too far down the development path. But that one's a clear one on us. If something on the CEQA side of things holds things up, or FERC or anything else, we've got to knock those out early.
And that's actually why we spent the money during this phase to hire the field biologist to do the sampling, so that we could try and mitigate that. Is it everything? No. Do we feel confident to risk our money going forward on it, that we're not going to run into any landmines? Yes.
Thank you for that. Matthew, did you want to add anything else, or?
I didn't have any further immediate questions, but certainly if your board has any further questions, that's why these gentlemen are here this morning. And we have some others in Zoom as well.
All right. Supervisor Simon?
Appreciate the presentation today. I was hoping for a little more clarity, not much more for me anyway than I had the last time. So just the uncertainty, he even said, Tuolumne County was trying to move forward, and, that was put to a stop. So ultimately, everything we're talking about, I think the overall concept is a good idea. I had a couple of things. I did have a question just on, this is a energy, water program or anything. Right now we've got $100,000 if we cancel. So we're already tacking that up to potential for ourselves. But I guess I have one question to the committee and to everybody on the committee with our ARPA funds. If we were to move forward with something like this today, would these cancellation fees for a project like this be available through our ARPA? I don't know if anyone has the answer, but we had the conversation earlier, it just got in my mind to look at that. And obviously, these are one-time funds that, at least I hope they're one-time funds, because what we had to go through to get them is not what we want to go through again. So that's a question that I do have. That helps my mind a little bit ease the risk from the county standpoint, because we as a county do not have, let's just take the top dollar, $1.5 million or more to just say, oh, we wanted a project, we thought it was a good concept, but then we're on that liability hook. So I have that question. I know I probably can't get that answer today, but I do pose that question because it involves water, energy, infrastructure, resiliency, all those things that are lined out in those categories for those funds. So I have that question. I don't know if anyone here today could answer that question.
We'll probably have to look at it a little further, Moak, to get that answer.
All right. The other thing too.
But it's a good point.
Yeah, I just, I look at it, there's a one-time opportunity. This may be something that could really bring benefit, but it's unknown. There's no precedent set for it anywhere yet. We're looking to kind of be, the trendsetters here for it. So the other question I have, it was talked about today and kind of with competing. I know you said this is different than battery storage. Just in developing it, but why couldn't battery storage be a part of this? Just a question. I know that increased costs, and the reason I bring that up is I know we have Calpine, one of our partners here, they have geothermal, they do that, but I know they're also looking at battery technology. So from my understanding, the way it is, so when they are asked to ramp down, they don't have to do that anymore. They can conserve that energy, shift it over to the battery, and so there's no loss of production. So I don't want to complicate it, but you kind of, for me, you made it like, well, this is better than that. Well, we're looking to complement everything, to build stuff, the opportunities if we're able to sell to back to the system, the batteries could be a part of it. You talked about only 12 hours at one time. Well, if it's enhanced, could it be 48 hours? Because there's battery capability to back that up when it's not needed. I don't know. I don't know the whole thing of that, but kind of make it one or the other, and I didn't know why that is. I know cost being number one, but it's a $146 million project, right? That's what I saw up on the board. And then the other challenge with that is, that's a lot of money on the project on an unknown. We know how much it would cost to replace our roads. I kind of, levy those. I know that's not what we're talking about, but, those are the things I weigh for our constituents here, because we know the benefit we'd get from the roads, fixing the roads and those types of things, if we're going to borrow that type of money for a project or something. So anyway, I know that's investor money, but looking at those things. Wait to see what the board, my real question is whether or not those potential losses, we could use ARP funds for those. That's really a question in my mind. I did vote for this. I had questions last time. I did vote for it. If the board puts a motion forward today, I think we should continue down a path to look at this, but trying to make sure that we protect our constituents, our tax dollars, as always talked from Supervisor Sabatier, and looking if the ARP funds could be that backup if we do have to move forward and something happens on our side where those liabilities are there. So those are my comments today, and thank you for the presentation. I can see it in my mind, but I'd rather see it happening where we could go look at it, because anyway, all right, thank you.
So if I can respond to a couple of your comments.
Go ahead.
So it may not, it's still on paper, right? It's not built, but we have actually, whether it's through the work that we've commissioned through GHD, whether it's the work that we've commissioned through some of the people doing electrical studies and working with PG&E to find out what the actual capacity was. It was the work that we did with ECO to figure out and do the chopping wood that's required to get to understanding. We thought we knew what the value of it was. Now we have a much better understanding because we did the math and the research to reduce the uncertainty on that. It was concept before. Now it's pretty much ready to take to an investor, and that was a lot of work in one way. And with regards to batteries, we actually would have some batteries in this. So for example, at the upper tank and at the lower works, we need batteries in case all the electricity suddenly goes out. We need batteries for communication. We need batteries to operate the valves. We need batteries to provide electricity for what's called the exciter field on the generator so that the generator can get started. This is, in utility world, what's called black start capability, which is everything goes dead and you can start up and start helping to build the system back up. And so there are actually batteries built in, but the real deal about the reason, and Jordan was mentioning this, 93% of the grid-connected energy storage in North America is pumped hydro. And the real reason is that it never wears out effectively. There are hydro turbines out there that are 100 years old that properly maintained are still operating. Yeah, you got to rewind the generator once every 40 or 50 years, but the hydro turbine itself continues, and they don't wear out with usage. A water tank on a hill doesn't really wear out. If you use it twice a day for 100 years, the tank and the pipeline and the turbines don't really wear out. Vertical split turbine pumps, they last a long time. Do you have to replace some solar modules because they start to age or augment them? Absolutely. There are some parts that you do. But the big chunks of this last a really long time. And so what that allows you to do is, instead of having to replace that every so often, that's why pump storage hydro has such a market dominant position. It's just what's called life cycle cost effectiveness is much higher because they just last longer. In addition to that, batteries, and again, we've installed batteries in parts of our projects. In some applications, they really are good. But for bulk energy storage, That's just not where we see their market niche, not especially when you have a nice big hill and the ability to generate hydropower and substations that aren't crowded with a lot of other power going into them right now and communities that need it. Batteries are part of it, but when you've got all the parts when you can do hydro, there's a reason that hydro has that much market share.
Yeah, and I would just add that as developers, we're going to be looking for what's going to have the best financial impact on the project. But if there's another impact that you guys are looking to get from having batteries, and that's something that we would have to really kind of spell out into the LOC that we have. It says, hey, we're looking for this additional benefit for this reason, because as developers, we're going to be looking for a project that makes the most financial sense. And I mean, if it took us down the path of powders, we would do that. But it just right now it doesn't look like it's going to. But you know, there's got to be some other benefit that you guys would want from that we'd have to be told about.
Well, it was just me making a comment. It wasn't the board asking for anything to change, but you guys made it kind of like, so thank you for your explanation. The other comment I have too is your comment about, you know, the substations here and everything, being able to take what we're even going to produce, because I know in my district, and maybe no one else has ran into this, we have you know, businesses that are trying to do solar programs and other things, and we're being, you know, are being told, well, our substation needs to be upgraded. That won't happen for 2 or 3 years where we can even take on the full project. You know, so you guys have already analyzed and got that back from PG&E that
Correct.
No problem. You guys can do the full project and we can take all your power, because in my area, I know I've already had to have a discussion with a business that was trying to do a full project, and they're being put on a hold saying, no, yeah, you can build your thing, but we can't take all your power. And we need to do a bunch of upgrades, and this is going to take a time. So you guys already have that from PG&E with that commitment?
We've been working with the PG Microgrid Enablement Program, but there's a pretty fundamental difference between our project and, say, Harvester's Market wanting to do something on top of it in Middletown or Hidden Valley Lake. When you're a business or residence or even a local government that puts solar and battery on your facility, you're using their feeder lines to get back to the substation. So it's the feeder lines themselves, it's the transformers at the substation, everything at that local distribution voltage. We're a different animal. We're running our own power lines back to the substation and going in at 12 kV onto the bus bar at the same voltage that the rest of the substation operates at. To put it in a different way, we swim in a different lane than the ones that are individual businesses trying to hook up photovoltaics or batteries. Another part that's really important, and this is getting a little bit technical, is that photovoltaics and batteries, ours included, make direct current power. They don't make the AC power that we have coming out of the plugs or that most of our electric equipment uses. We use AC, but the renewables make DC. The way that DC power for most offices or buildings gets converted into AC is an electronic inverter that simulates a sine wave.
I appreciate all the information. I had a simple question. I don't.
Yes.
So
the answer
is different.
Is yes. We've been talking to them and we can do it.
Okay. All right. I appreciate it. That's in the weeds too much, you know.
I tend to do that.
You almost got to IT talk there, so I had to stop you.
Well done.
All right, any other questions?
So thank you.
Thank you for stopping them.
Yeah.
All right. Supervisors,
just one last comment. If we choose an option today, let's say option 3, in the near future, we will see a new letter of commitment coming back to us, and then at that point is when the final approval comes?
Correct.
Okay. So I'm comfortable with moving forward, but I think, again, the devil will be in the details of that letter, and so that's where I am.
Supervisor Max.
Oh, I'll just do my comment after public.
So I'll open it to the public. Is there anybody from the public that has any comments on this item on the agenda? come forward, sir, and state your name for the record, and once you state your name, we'll give you 3 minutes.
My name is Dennis White. I'm with Hidden Valley Community Services District, and we're looking at a similar project, as you know, in this. So I want to say, congratulations on your project and possibly moving forward. With our project, we're hitting a couple of hurdles in funding. One of them is the building code. It's a effectiveness on the grading score that hasn't been done in a while for the county. So we're missing out on opportunities for funding. So when we're looking at our project, we're looking at many facets of the project as well, including water storage. Okay, so this helps us with our infrastructure and moving forward. What I'm asking you is to possibly look at, moving forward with that building code effective grading scoring and looking at that.
All right. Did you have anything else to add, or?
No, I just think this is a great project, and I think it holds a lot of benefits for our county. So.
And so you're saying that you feel your project would be further with the situation and the building code resolved, or at least being worked on, is that?
Right, at least working forward on it.
Is that the BSAG that we were speaking about?
Yes.
Yes. So BSEGS is a process that is handled by ISO, which is also known as VERISC, and each county is assigned a score. Special districts within a county are not eligible to get their own score. So typically that is run through the chief building official on behalf of a county. So if your board wanted to make direction that that was a priority, typically the chief building official would handle it, and certainly we can provide whatever support we're able to.
Ms. Grant, I see you.
It's just not on the agenda,
Okay.
so that's why
I just felt
wouldn't
like,
be giving direction.
yeah, no direction, but I just felt like knowing where you are at with it as a point to where just the process so that we can know from.
Yeah, well, we're also looking, we're, in a letter of commitment as well, and we're looking to try to go into a definitive agreement with Train, so.
Thank you, Mr. White. Did you have a question?
But I would say that the BSAG has denied us potential grant funding for this project, so definitely no direction for that, but I think it does have a relation to this conversation, especially for future grant opportunities if we choose to move forward.
Thank you, Mr. White.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Is there anyone else with public comment in the chambers? And I'll look online right here. I see a hand up, Victoria Brandon. If you can unmute, we'll give you 3 minutes.
Okay, I unmuted. Can you hear me?
Oh, we hear you great.
Great. Okay, thank you so much for this presentation. This is absolutely fascinating. And obviously there are a bunch of substantial advantages to be had, even though there are also some problems. I have a couple of questions. First one is this project in Tuolumne County that apparently was ran into impediments that could not be worked around and had to back out. So you feel confident that whatever caused that one to crash and burn is not applicable to this project here?
Yes, that's correct. So the impediment that we ran into there was as we started conferring with attorneys with experience in the FERC non-jurisdictionality process, they said, oh, by the way, this can't go across any federal land. If you want the fast track process, you have to hit several gates, you have to check off every box. One of the boxes you have to check is no federal or tribal lands. The Tuolumne project, the top of the hill was federal land. And so until we got deeper into FERC, we didn't know that it was an impediment. And it didn't necessarily kill it. It's just that it turned it from a 6-month process into like a 2 to 4 year process. And that was too much risk for us to take. So we took the money we'd spent, we said thank you, and we backed out.
Okay, thank you. That obviously wouldn't apply here. My other concern is about, the idea is to pump groundwater for storage and for a supplemental power generation later. which all makes perfect sense, but this area has had various development proposals in which it became obvious that the groundwater supply is not all that well understood. Have you done some preliminary studies to figure out that pumping this water is not going to interfere with the current use of groundwater in that area for domestic use and otherwise?
Yes, actually we have. So we first off, we looked at, as we do with any of the projects that we're looking at, we looked at the Department of Water Resources groundwater database to look for impacted aquifers. And it was not in the list of impacted aquifers there. The other part to keep in mind is that 43 million gallons sounds like a lot, and it's about 100 acre feet. But that, if you're building the project, the first thing you do is you build the tank, you're putting in the wells, and you start trickle charging it over the life of the construction of the project. And these are sealed tanks, top and bottom, so it's not the same as a normal power production where the water is actually used in the production of the electricity. This is the same water shuttling back and forth once it's filled up, unless there's a fire. And if there's a fire, you're going to use a lot of that water, and then it's going to take months and months for it to recharge. Who knows, maybe a year. But yes, absolutely, looking at groundwater on something like this is important, but it is something that's a gradual charge one time.
Thank you. It'll be very interesting to follow this as it moves forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I don't see any other hands up in Zoom, so with that, I'll bring it back to the board for further discussion or action or direction, I think is the proper statement. Supervisor Pyska.
Yeah, I think moving ahead with the letter of commitment for option 3 I'm comfortable with that. I think we should, now that our potential risk is tripling, that maybe we should identify where that would come from if we had to make a discretionary decision, and if that can come from ARPA or if there's another place. I think it's just probably prudent for us to all understand that this is an exciting project. It hasn't been done before. I kind of think back to another project, much smaller in scale, that is held up in litigation in my district, and the impacts now several years down the road where we really needed that project. And so I would hate to miss this opportunity. I think it's, definitely something we need to continue to engage in. And I'm surprised that the timeline is actually so short. So I'm ready to move forward with that direction to staff, but I do think it's prudent to understand where our risk funds would come from.
Any other comments? Well, I thank you for bringing this forward. Matthew, thank you for working with Michael and Train on this as well. I think in thinking about this, it is a risk. Anything we decide on when it comes to that is a risk. I like what Supervisor Simon stated about we know what to do with $100,000 in regards to other things. It does worry me, and even thinking about, I really don't even like seeing it there. The potential of losing the million potential, that's like way too high to lose or to risk for the county, and so I'm glad that that's not an option. I think I'm okay with the option 3, and I would like to see this happen. That's the thing. I worry though because a lot of times. These barriers or situations come up, and I understand the economy. I know that puts a damper on things in some instances, but when you mentioned the actual possible rewards in regards to the fact that what those costs would entail, that is somewhat comforting. So I think I'm okay with that as well. I think we need to figure out though, like that question that you posed as well, Supervisor Simon, about the ARPA funds covering it in case that there's a situation as such. So, yeah.
And I'm not worried about the money part. I think that we have the money. It's whether or not we want to risk that amount of money because we have, I forget what it's called, but we have a budget amount of, I think, $4 million for unexpected situations. This could potentially be one of those things. So the money's there. It's a matter of the risk. That's where my concern lies. I get it that it would require more time to reduce risk by adding partners into this, but at this moment in time, I'm willing to move forward. The letter will be really important as to the level of detail to make me more comfortable with taking that risk, so I'll wait until that comes to us.
All right. Any other comments? Supervisor Simon?
Yeah, so I'm willing to move forward with the board too with the letter of commitment number 3. I posed my question on the ARPA funds. I'd like to get an answer to that before it comes back or when it comes back, either way. So, yeah, like I said, I understand what we're trying to do here, but just the uncertainty moving forward is the hard part to really get around that. So, but yeah, I'm in favor of moving forward.
So, yeah, I have just one other question, and I can't remember if it came up in our last discussion, but when we talk about the impact of jobs on a project like this for construction and then for operation, what are some forecasts that you have for that? Because that will significantly impact our county as well.
So the jobs are relatively short term.
Okay.
So you're probably looking at 12 to 18 months in terms of the construction project. Tanks go up pretty fast. The pipe comes in and gets welded pretty fast. And so the exact number of jobs, I can't tell you right now, but I can work actually with GHD, our partners on this, and try and come back with a number of full-time equivalents and person years of labor associated with it. And I think there are some metrics that we can look at it. But I can tell you it's absolutely in the tens of thousands of man-hours going in. Now, the operational side is actually quite modest. This equipment just doesn't need a lot of tender loving care, and that's part of what makes it so cost effective, is that it lasts for a very long time because just of the nature of the design. There's certainly some maintenance on valve stems and packing glands and the like, but it's not a tremendous number.
Okay.
I would say, though, that there is a jobs impact, and that's the lights not going out and things not, going bad in the freezer and, fire not roaring down the canyon.
Mike, could there be an opportunity for like a living, learning lab environment where kind of teaching students, whether it's high school, community colleges?
One of the things that we do with some of the community colleges, for example, that we work with, is that we turn these into something called a living learning lab. And the group, correct me if I'm wrong, National Council on Community Education.
NC3.
Yeah, NC3 helps us convert it into a curriculum. And the reality is that there are going to be more of these built. We're talking to people about building a lot of these because California needs a lot of energy storage, and there are a lot of towns in fire country. There are a lot of towns whose lights go out too often for their local life. And so this is something that we could explore, whether it's with Mendocino or UCD, about turning into a curriculum and a training opportunity.
We also have a woodland community as well.
Yeah, in Woodland.
And they have a robust water waste treatment program already, and so I was thinking of John Hamner right off the bat, just in that discussion.
Thank you. All right.
We got direction. You have direction, Matthew? You guys?
You guys, the consensus that has emerged so far sufficient, or differently stated?
The consensus was all that was asked for, so as long as you've got 3 to proceed. But again, the issue here was direct staff to follow forward on one of the available pathways. I believe you've indicated by consensus, that's number 3.
Yes.
Yeah. Yep, I think that's what.
Number 2 just seems to come from left field if number 3 is what both train and us wanting less risk. It just number 2 just seems like an oddball one.
All right, so I think you have the consensus for direction, and I know too that one of the things was stated plenty of times was devil would be in the details when that comes back, and so some of the things we discussed we hope to see come forward, especially in regards to the questions and with the Clean Water Ground Act or Clean Water Act and more, I guess, scenarios in case it's not just the Army Corps, it could be other, other agencies or entities, so that'd be great. So with that, I think we'll close this item, and you have what you need, Matthew? All right, thank you very much for this discussion, thank you for presentation, and I think what we'll do is I'll stop at a point to either lunch break. Is everybody on board with that?
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. So we'll go ahead and take a lunch break starting at 12:40, and we'll go from that to 1:40, right?
Sounds good to me.
Good. All right.
Okay.
All right, thank you, and we'll see you at 1:40.